is, we still have all of our permanent subs. That was not on the chopping block. We still have those, which is tremendous. And I think that as we get through this year, we're going to be using ESS for some other things because they can have a different program out there for really, if you need a certified teacher for something, they have teachers that work for them. We pay different money for that. And we're going to work with them on some intervention. So, come on, Megan.
All right. Got me all mic'd up today. Oh, what is this?
That you just talk.
Okay. Okay. Hey, everybody. Hey, guys. In the past, I don't have a presentation for today. I'm just going to give some reminders. In the past, I've gone over campus user tip sheets with you guys. I feel like you're pretty good at that. I know there's a couple of new admin. If you're struggling with that, we can meet individually for sure. So just let me know. But I am going to send you an email after I leave here today that will have those campus user tip sheets that we've gone over before as a refresher, which we all need sometimes. In those campus user tip sheets, it's going to include the incident reporting in there as well, which I went over last year. So you can have those as a refresher as well. And also, too, last year we went over running reports in Frontline. So I'm going to send you that once again as another refresher. I'm not going to go over those today with you. I just came in to give you a couple of reminders. One of the biggest ones is refer a friend. Please push refer a friend with your staff. Okay, it gives them an opportunity to get some money from referring substitutes. Okay, so I'm going to send you a separate email after I leave here, specifically for you to send out to your staff. That will have those, it'll have the refer friend information for them, where they go to register and all of that information. And it will also have tip sheets, Frontline tip sheets for them specifically on how to create an absence, modify an absence, as well as creating preferred substitutes lists. So I'm going to send you an email specifically to send out to them. Okay, and they all do get emails from Frontline to set up their account, even if they tell you they don't. But they do to set up their account. If I need to resend it to them, let me know, because that always happens around the beginning of the school year. No one can figure out how to set up their account or get back into it from last year. So just let me know on that front. Second reminder. If you speak to someone who is interested in substitute teaching, if you are directing them to apply, if they have any questions, of course, you can give them my contact information, but you can just tell them to go to ess.com to apply. That's where they go. It would be ess.com. Real simple. And then once they apply, I'll reach out to them. If they have any specific questions before they want to apply, yes, of course. And then lastly is something new that I want to make you aware of. We did renew our contract with Anderson County Schools this year, so yay. But there is a new clause in there that I have to let you guys know about. If you plan to hire an ESS substitute, which you all do, if you plan to hire one, you need to make sure that they have worked at least 30 assignments before you can hire them, or the district will have to pay a fee. So in order to avoid any unnecessary fees, I've talked to Christy as well, so she knows. I need to make all of you aware that if you plan to hire someone, you need to check with me first to see if they have worked at least 30 assignments. This is new in all contracts, as much as you probably think I tried to put that in there. I did not. Okay, that's new in all contracts. Also, too, it gives our subs an opportunity to utilize our Kickstart incentive. That's a reimbursement program that we have. So after they work a certain amount of days, they get reimbursed for hiring cost. So they can utilize that before you hire them. All right. Otherwise, that's all I had today, unless anyone had anything for me. You'll be getting emails from me after I leave here. I already have them ready to go. And as always, just let me know if you need anything. Okay? All right. Good?
Deal.
All right.
Good. Sounds good.
Thank you, guys. Oh, you need to,
Don't take it with you.
there you go. Yeah, I'm still
Hey,
working on it.
as we wait on Chris,
haven't
just a
found one
couple
yet.
of things. I sent out an email to
She
the
stole one of
principals
them already for
yesterday
hers.
that had all the
So I'll look for
survey
enough.
in it. I apologize for that. I didn't read the fine print. Usually they send them out to everybody. Well, this year the state sent it to the director and said, hey, you need to send these out to your principals. So I didn't read the fine print. That was my mistake. So hopefully you have those. Clinton High School didn't have enough people to, do it, so they didn't have, you don't have any data from Clinton High School. So I can send you the 22, 23 data, okay? The other thing is for next week, on Thursday, we're gonna do pullouts, all right? And that means there's some special ed pullouts. I think there's some, Head Start pullouts. Where's Amy? Or there's some Head Start pullouts.
If it won't, if anybody who has a conflict, to let me know. On Tuesday, we've got to have them come by the office. because
Okay.
they have to pick up class and technology.
Okay.
And then Thursday, there would not be pull-outs.
Not be pullouts, okay, good deal.
That's the same as nursing too.
Do
Our
what?
nurses- Our nurses will be pulled on Tuesday.
On Tuesday,
They'll be back.
they'll be back,
the rest
okay,
of the whole
It won't be the whole day.
okay, good deal. The other thing, so that's all, Monday's yours, Day, you use it as you see fit. And then on Friday, I sent out that email that we will meet at 9 o'clock at Second Baptist. That will be all staff except, maintenance and, custodians. I already met with them and talked with them when we had our meeting here last week, okay? So they won't be there. Then from 9 to 9:30, I will do an opening spiel. At 9:30, we will have the guy that jumped off the Gay Street Bridge, Kevin Hines. And so from 9:30 to 10:30, all staff will be there. At 10:30, we will let nutrition and office staff go at that time, okay? So that means the people that will be in poverty training will be all of our certified teachers and our assistants that work in the classrooms, okay? We want to make sure they're there. Then, that will be over about 12:15. At 1:30 at CHS Auditorium, all classified. Now, if they think they don't need any information about what days they work and what their pay is and benefits and all that stuff, I'm not gonna make them come. But that was one of the things that was on the, when we do our meetings with all of our groups, that was one of the things that was on 2 or 3 of them. Custodian, it was on classified. They wanted to know more about benefits and what they did, so I asked Marcus to do that, and they'll be doing that at 1:30. Should be about an hour and a half, but they'll be done by 3 o'clock, okay? Any questions on that? Next, that Wednesday is, man, it's hard to believe. That Wednesday is registration day. It's gonna be a busy day. I know some of you all, don't come in till later in the afternoon. That is fine and dandy, whatever you all do. The one thing to make sure, if you're doing something special, or you're doing those things, make sure, let's try to get it on the district calendar, okay? So everybody knows about it. With that day, everybody's gonna be doing something, so don't worry about that day. But if you're doing something throughout the year that's special, the board members really wanna know things about that, like if you're having musicals and different things like that, okay? Any questions about all that? And the other stuff I put on there about the Focus 4 and about your 9-box grid, things like that. Any other questions? Any other things that we need to go over? Because I know I forgot some stuff. Susie, was she not in?
She's out in the hallway.
Kim, Paula, anything? We're good. I went on yesterday, everybody that could be exempt, that had filled out the exemption for Hassel, I went ahead and approved those yesterday. So if you've not been on there, go ahead and do those things. I think that's That,
You didn't do mine.
do what?
You didn't do mine.
I did, you had yours on there twice. I did it twice. I did yours too. Thanks, sir. I was trying to think who I did. I did Kim, I did, Rob, I did yours, and I did Travis. Yep. It's hard to believe Travis, I didn't think he'd been out of high school.
Because he's got that patchy beard, you can't ever tell.
It'll grow in eventually. I'm just wondering how many times, listen, he eats 5 times a day. Every time I'm up there, he eats. He's a growing boy. But anyway, any concerns or anything you want to bring up? That here's a good time. We got about 15 minutes. Yes.
I needed like 2 to 5 minutes. Real quickly, this year, the state has passed a couple of laws, which he may cover in a minute, but one of the big ones on AI. You'll probably hear quite a bit about that. You will hear a lot more from me this year. The state passed a law, the board has passed the first reading of a new board policy on AI. Part of that says that every software product that we use that has AI in it has to be on our district website. So I'm going to be working with you all to see what software your teachers use. I know what we send from the district, but just to give you an idea, Google Chrome browser, it has AI in it. If you use, even personally, the Walmart app, Amazon app, everything in it now has AI. So the state complies with the law. We have to list every product, software product that our teachers are using with our students and have that list on the website. Another big piece with that is student data privacy. A lot of your folks use free things, and that's great in one sense, but if it's free, typically you're the product. You probably heard me say that before. We have to really make sure now that there are privacy documents signed. We're actually joining a consortium with Tennessee that has all of these pieces worked out for the major players. So they're already be built in for us and will give us a lot of protection from the district level. And if they're not on the list, then I'll be sending some things out for you to let your folks know, hey, if you're going to use this product, the vendor has to sign off that says they're not going to sell our student data. You know, unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't think when they put their rosters up on a website. They've just given all their kids' data as far as their first name, their last name. They're going to get to see their scores on some different things. And so we have to make sure that we're reining in that data loss. So 2 big pieces. I will not try to drive you crazy with emails, but in the next few weeks you'll be seeing those emails from me and just make sure we work together to make sure we're compliant with the law.
Hey, listen, I meant to bring it to you. So I've been playing with AI, okay? I just want to. So I said, I want you to write me a back to school speech and use hillbilly and redneck terms, okay? Listen, it was good because it said we're going to have a rootin' tootin' time and I guess it's time to kick the barn door open and have the excitement like a Saturday night. Oh, man. You know, and I mean, it was so good, but the bad thing about that's the way I talk, so that's bad about me. It kind of got me. So as high school, you all will start, because I did one, and listen, I just don't talk like that. It had some words on there I didn't understand. Anybody else? Anything? Kelly? We're going to be getting with a STEM, and when we talk about STEM, we're excited about that because Amy's going to be getting with you all, and we're going to try to really pull some things together. And my kind of dream for that is, especially with middle school, because middle schoolers hate summer school. They just don't go. But if we can pull some STEM stuff together, some things together to where they can get out and get their hands dirty and do some of those things, I think we can still do some really exciting things that they won't think they're learning, but they will do. So, anyway, we will be adjourned now until Chris gets here. Ta-da! Introduction, because he is very knowledgeable. He's been a teacher. He does a lot of stuff with us that we really and truly can't live without. And especially through some time, we're going to talk about some things after a while, about some other things. But Chris McCarty.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that, and that means a lot. Thank you, guys. Good to see everybody. If you've never seen my face before, consider yourself lucky. I understand that. If you have, I hope it's been somewhat of a pleasant experience, although nobody wants to see me walk into their building. I get that too. All right, so we're just going to jump in. I mean, I'd just rather just jump in and talk about it. So what's happened this year, legally speaking? I would say that the state has been super active. What we were all paying attention to from the state this year was vouchers. I think we'll all admit that, right? We were kind of watching the voucher bill. What happened to turn the mic. Did I mess it up? Oh, turn it up. Okay, let's see. You can tell I'm really good at this. Oh, scoot it toward me? Okay. How about that?
Here, it's flashing. We got it.
Oh, you can tell I'm really great at this tech stuff. Oh, there we go. Now, you guys wanted to hear that. Who like that nasal tone? It's just great. I told you guys every year I tell my wife that she's like, what do you do for these few weeks? She's like, I just talk all that. She goes, that sounds miserable. I mean, just listening to you like that. You can tell she loves me. All right, I don't want to get these together. Okay, so voucher bill, seems like that's all we looked at. I get that. That's all I was watching for a while too. But what's happened with that is the state was able to do a lot more stuff, sort of honestly kind of under the color of night. Like there's just a lot of other bills that nobody was watching that just got passed. So we're going to talk about some of those today, some of which I think have more practical effect on you guys as administrators than years past. And you'll see what I mean by that. I'm not necessarily even saying bad. You'll get to decide on that. It's not as much anti-public ed as we've had in the last few years, but it's just different. It's going to be some difference, especially with some disciplinary issues. All right, so got to start with my favorite topic. Am I too loud in this thing? Or am I good? A little bit too loud. Yeah, I get that. I can hear myself, and I'm already annoyed. All right, how's that? Better? Okay, there we go. You guys are like, man, I can't take that for doing. All right, so Title IX. Where are we at with Title IX? Let's first talk about what is Title IX. So the basics of Title IX can't discriminate on the basis of sex, right? So the whole debate over the last few years from the legislature, from everybody, from the feds, from courts, from circuit court, everybody, politicians, has been about what does that mean, right? What does on the basis of sex mean? Does it mean sex? And then we get into a whole other debate, which is going to be so much fun, which is what does sex mean, okay? And I'm definitely not going to private lives. I'm talking about just, from a gender perspective, right? Because that's the debate. So what's happened this year on Title IX? I want to try to unwind this for y'all a little bit because it's confusing to anybody. So in April, the U.S. Department of Education came out finally with its final version, written rules on Title IX according to this administration. Okay, they've been promising those since literally January 2021. We got them this year. Remember, the last time we had a huge Title IX overhaul was many, many years ago, and I'm joking when I say that. It was literally 2020 when we all had to do the training. We were talking about it all the time. Secretary DeVos, one of the last things she did was those Title IX changes, and now here 4 years later, they've put them upside down again, okay? What the feds have proposed that those final rules say, the controversial part's at the bottom here, that under those regulations, if they were going into effect, and we'll talk about that, they would go into effect August 1st, according to US DOE. Sex stereotypes, pregnancy, sexual orientation, and gender identity would be protected and would trigger Title IX. So gender identity means what? Transgender, okay? Transgender, or somebody saying they're gender fluid, something like that, okay? So for the first time, the feds officially said, hey, we're going to consider that if a kid comes to you and says, I've been discriminated against based on transgender status, or I want you to use a different name, that's going to be a Title IX right. Okay, this is the feds saying that. So as you can imagine, literally 2 weeks later, Tennessee and 6 other states, through our AG's office, sued to block the implementation of those new rules. All right, so going backwards, they're supposed to go into effect August 1st. They will not go into effect August 1st. Let me just get that out of the way, because this is going to be confusing in a second. I'm trying for it not to be. The court case was filed, again, Tennessee and multiple other states, southern states, filed the case in the Eastern District Court of Federal District Court in Kentucky. Okay? That judge, within the last 2 weeks, came out and put down an injunction basically saying, and if you want to go read it because you have trouble sleeping at night, you can read it, but it's long, and he basically ruled that these rules, as proposed by the United States Department of Education, are too expansive, and they read terms into the word sex that aren't in the statute. Specifically, he focuses on gender identity, and the idea that the feds are taking this concept that was come up in 1972 of what sex is, and they've expanded it since then with regulations, and he just pushed back and said they're stopped. Like I'm putting an injunction down, and they will not go into effect on August 1st in the states that filed suit, which includes us. So for everybody in this room, let me just nail it down. After that long-windedness, as of right now in the state of Tennessee, by federal decree, sounds like a king or something, but by federal decree, gender identity is not protected under Title IX. Period. I mean, that's what the court really hung his hat on. Is that type of expansion is not in the statute. We're not going to let you do it. Okay. Since then, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is the one we care about, has taken an expedited appeal on that. So they're going to hear it soon. But importantly, they've allowed the injunction to stay in place while it's on appeal. So guys, it'll be the fall, well into the fall, before we even get a decision from the Sixth. And the Sixth already came out with a decision. I mean, I know this is convoluted, believe me. Trying to keep up with it's hard. The Sixth already came out with an opinion recently that sort of already said they're going to probably agree with the Eastern District. So I expect fully that they're going to stick with that injunction. Why am I still talking about it then? Because one, I want to clear up any confusion. I know this has been confusing. I know you've seen news stories from both perspectives and another perspective and one from outer space, etc. So bottom line is gender identity right now in the state of Tennessee is not protected under Title IX. Now that doesn't mean, let's get fun here. That doesn't mean we treat kids poorly, right? We don't do that for any reason. Like there's a Tennessee Code of Ethics provision that says basically, literally, we don't discriminate against students for any reason. So we're not going to treat kids bad. We're going to take care of kids. We're going to protect kids. That's never been a debate, right? The big debate would be, do we have to perform certain types of accommodations? And does transgender status trigger mandatory accommodations for certain things? The answer right now would be no. Okay, the answer would be no. Let's go backwards a little bit, though, because some of this stuff, where it can be more confusing, is some of these things were already determined to be under Title IX by courts. Gender identity, no. Depends on the courts. They're all mixed about that. But things like sex stereotypes have always been protected. So for a second, I want to talk about that because that can sort of sneak up on you as a problem, and somebody could think it's transgender. All right. So example would be when I think sex stereotype, what am I talking about? Like, don't give me a legal. What do you think of when you think of a stereotype associated with a sex? What are you thinking of?
Girls play with dolls.
There you go. Yeah, boys play with trucks. There you go. Perfect. Well, girls play with dolls. Boys play with trucks. What's that? Was somebody else saying something?
The way they dress.
The way they dress. What do you mean by that?
Girls' dresses, boys,
Yeah.
kind of baggy.
There you go. Yeah, I mean the way we dress. The phrase tomboy. What's tomboy mean? What do we think of that? I don't know if you can say that anymore. Who knows? Yeah, like somebody that's dressing traditionally masculine, right? Or if we think of an effeminate man, we're thinking of somebody that maybe does things a little bit different. Maybe like a girl does traditionally. Maybe a boy taking a ballet class is thinking that's a sex stereotype. So remember that the courts have always determined that that's protected under Title IX. So if you have a kid that comes to you this year and says, hey, they're picking on me because they think I act like a girl or because they think I talk like a girl. I'm just saying maybe what the kid would say. That would trigger Title IX. See the difference? Or they're picking on me because I'm a girl and I always wear pants and I'm all, they don't like, I'm always wearing a hat. I'm sounding so ridiculous right now, but you understand what I'm saying. Just stereotype stuff. Treat that as a sex stereotype claim, not a transgender claim. Okay? So and again, if a kid's getting picked on or bullying or harassment, we're always going to deal with that, whether it's Title IX or not. We don't want kids in a safety issue, right? We don't want kids getting harassed. It just might not be based on their gender identity. Okay? So, yep.
I don't like to really do what ifs personally.
Oh, I love what ifs. That makes my whole job better. Yeah, yeah.
I know you do.
Yep.
So if gender identity is not under this for Tennessee,
Sure.
but a kid
Oh,
say,
I know
is
you're
getting
doing.
picked on for gender identity, could they come to us and say, I'm getting picked on for sex stereotypes
Yep.
and bypass the Tennessee?
Sure they could.
Okay.
Yeah, sure they could. In fact, that's the way I'd probably treat it.
Okay.
If a kid comes to you and says, I'm getting picked on because I'm transgender, if it's picked on, we want to address it anyway. We got a policy in our board manuals that say we don't let you get picked on for anything. We don't let you get harassed for anything. So if we want to sort of cover our bases, we could just treat it as Title IX for sex stereotype, and we're still protected, and we're also not walking into a political blank fire, okay? Just makes it easier. We can address it. We can address it in a normal way, a way we've been doing it for 20, 30 years, right? And you're not walking into, hey, they're doing an investigation at the high school based on this, right? We don't want to do that, right? But it still takes care of kids. We solve both problems. Let's put it that way. All right, so let's talk about then sort of where we're at. So like I said, injunction went down. These rules were not going to affect August 1st. Let me tell you something that you guys are going to love this. I'm going to look left here. Let me tell you something I think is done, and that is the feds even punted, pun intended, on the sports issue. Okay, I think the feds have given up, and basically they even issued a press release about a year ago, the U.S. Department of Education did, that basically said, and they never say anything straight, so I'm just going to interpret it. It basically said, if you're grouping kids for sports reasons, from puberty up, so from middle school up, based on sex, we're okay with that. We're not going to fight you. And in fact, they didn't literally, in hundreds of pages of new regulations, they didn't mention sports one time. Because they know, I'm going to be honest with you, they know the polling on that is really bad. I don't care if you're left or right. The polling is like 90-10, that people are okay with you dividing people by gender based on sports. Okay? So I think that's done. I think our Tennessee law on that is going to be in place for decades to come. Okay? Now, right now you guys are thinking, wait a minute, I just read a headline last week that a kid that was born a boy won a girls' championship and named the state. Okay? That's based on state law. So if that's in California, California literally allows you to do that. Massachusetts, those states have decided they're going to go the opposite way. And what the feds have basically done on the sports thing is they're basically letting us handle it state by state. So if Tennessee and Georgia and all those other states want to divide by sex, like we do now, the feds are basically saying we're not jumping into that cauldron. Okay? So that's done. So remind me, just for fun, what is our state law on sports and gender? What does it basically say? You don't have to give me the legalities. Just what does it say?
They play of what it says on the birth certificate.
Which birth certificate? Their original birth certificate. I know that sounds crazy because you guys are like, I didn't know I could get another one. I didn't either. But you can in certain states, and they will issue them in certain states. That's why in Tennessee we mandate the original. So it's got to be at or around the time of birth, at or around the time of adoption. Okay? So with that being the case, always remember this too. It only applies to gendered sports. And for my TWA heads in here, how many sports are there, even for decades, that don't have a gender associated with them, according to TSA bylaws? Like if I said football, is football boys football? It's just football. So if I was a girl and I all of a sudden identify as a boy, can I try out for the football team? Yeah. Sure. Because boys or girls can try out for football, transgender or non-transgender. All right, what about soccer in the fall? What do we call that? That's girls. Girls soccer. You know where I'm going? What do we call the one in the spring? Just soccer. So spring soccer is just soccer. So if you are a girl and want to try out for spring soccer, there's nothing that would stop you. Nothing that would stop a transgender boy. So somebody born a girl identifying as a boy could try out for spring soccer. It's always just been soccer. That's because, like growing up in Seymour, we didn't have enough for a girls team. So we had girls on our boys team. And that's still the same way, like in West Tennessee, more rural areas, they don't have enough. So there's a lot of co-ed teams out that way. All right, so like you said, though, basketball is boys and girls. So there we got clear genders associated with it. What about cheerleading according to TWA? Has that got a gender? Nope. It does not. So again, transgender boy, transgender girl could try out for cheerleading. Now they might not make it based on they can't do a back handspring or whatever, because obviously I can't do that either. But all those things are available to them. It's only the gendered sports that this law applies to. Okay, what happens in Tennessee? Quick review then, since we know these federal guidelines don't apply. What happens if you get a kid that comes to y'all and says, hey, I'm transgender, I've decided I'm now a boy, I was born a girl, but I want to use the boys' restroom. What is our answer to that under Tennessee law? Nope. We give them what instead? What are you going to say?
Always send, like,
yeah,
a different option.
Right.
Library, bathrooms
there
that
you
nobody
go.
uses, a staff restroom if you want to.
Perfect.
Something along those lines.
Yeah, so Tennessee law makes us accommodate that now, but we accommodate it by not giving them access to the newly associated gender, but instead to a private restroom facility or a more private restroom facility. Like you said, nobody uses the library, so we're going to give you a key to that, something like that. That's what we have to do under Tennessee law. And remember, too, one real quick review on that, that law applies not just to transgender students, it applies to any reason that somebody might come to us for a bathroom accommodation. So if somebody comes in and says, my child has IBS, we might have to give them access to that private, staff lounge, that kind of thing. Okay, yep.
a new sport in Tennessee, girls 7-on-7. It's designated girls 7-on-7.
So that's girls only.
It's girls only.
Yep. So if the bottom line on that is, that's a great question. If the TWSA website says girls in front of it or says boys in front of it, those are your gendered sports. Like those are the ones that we've designated or TWSA has that they will have a gender associated with it. What about baseball? That's a fun one.
How's that work with softball and baseball?
So softball is girls, baseball is not. Baseball is just baseball. So you can be a girl and try out for baseball. You can be a transgender boy and try out for baseball because it's always been just baseball. It's not a gendered sport. So just check your website because there's and most of these, like you said, there's very few that are new that are gendered. And a lot of these ones that are non-gendered have been that way since the start. Like baseball's never had a gender associated with it, according to USAA. Spring soccer's never had a gender associated with it. So all those. Okay. All right. Yep.
So, take it an extra step.
Yeah. Do it.
Transgender boy, yes, they can try out for baseball. It's girl. Transgender boy playing locker room.
Yep. Oh no. So the great question. Still separate there. So the Tennessee accommodation, the bill we were talking about earlier, applies to bathrooms and locker rooms same way. So if you had a student that, let's say it's a transgender boy, so born a girl, that makes the baseball team. I'm just saying, makes the baseball team. We would then have to accommodate them with some sort of a private dressing area, and or we would give them access even during baseball season to a girls training or girls locker room. Maybe it'd be the basketball locker room or something else. Yep. Any other questions on that? I will tell you, I don't care your politics. I'm so tired of talking about this issue, I can't even tell you guys. It feels like this is all I get to talk about at legal stuff. All right? With that said, let me show you one for sure, a new law that is in effect. This is a Tennessee law. And this one is going to be big, especially for your school counselors. They're going to have a lot of questions about this one, so let's go ahead and jump into it. This is a new Tennessee law on gender identity, so it's in effect right now. Let's just read it. I don't always read statutes, but I'm going to read this one to you. If a student enrolled in an LEA or public charter school requests an accommodation from an employee, okay, I want to stop there. This only applies if it's one of our employees, okay? So if it's a contractor from, I don't know, we use Helen Ross McNabb, who do you guys use? Ridgeview. So if it's a contractor from Ridgeview, this does not apply, okay? The other thing is when it says accommodation, it doesn't have to be formal. It could literally be, I request verbally this. It could be the student asking for something verbally. That's usually what's going to trigger it, okay? So request an accommodation from an employee of the LEA, and that could be any employee though. So this could be a request to a TA, a request to the lady that takes the money at the cafeteria, a request to the teacher, a request to you, okay? That is intended to affirm the student's gender identity. Okay, so let me also say this. Does it say anything in this statute about sexual orientation? So if a kid comes up to one of you or to a teacher and says that they are now gay, that they are now a lesbian, that they are now bisexual, this statute is not triggered. This statute just applies to gender identity accommodation requests. We'll talk about what that means. Including a request that the student be addressed using a name that differs from the name assigned to the student on the student's school registration or the student's record, or that the student be addressed using a pronoun that also doesn't correspond with the gender we have down for them. Then two things have to happen. Promptly after that request is made to an employee, the employee shall, means there's no exceptions, shall report it to administration, and administration shall promptly tell the parents. So now if we get a request from a kid, let's just play this out, let's play this out practically, that Mary has been Mary since she was born. Mary comes into your middle school classroom and says, I am now Max. Then you as that teacher have to tell administration, and you as administration have to then contact the parents and tell the parents what was requested.
So the student that comes and changes them daily.
Okay, great question. No, that's a great question. I can answer that. There is almost no question I haven't heard on this one. All right, so let's say it's the kid that changes it daily. Then all we're going to do is when we make that report to mom and dad, we're going to say, I'm making a report that they're changing their name. And candidly, mom and dad, they're changing it all the time. That it's happening multiple times. I'm just letting you know now. Just document you're telling them that they're changing it, and we're good. Just document you told them that these requests are being made. And also, I'm going to say on this one, you're going to see where I'm going to go in a minute. We can get sued under this one. They created a new claim of a cause of action under this, so we can literally get sued for not doing it. So I'm going to tell you go that extra step of maybe even emailing a supervisor and saying, hey, on this date, received a report from Teacher X. Teacher X told me that Max wanted to be Mary. Called the parents at 4:15 p.m., told them that done. Email sent. Okay, keep it in a folder. because that's going to be your CYA get out of jail free card later. Why do I like emails? Time stamped. I can prove later exactly when it was sent, how promptly we handled the whole thing. Okay? All right, any other questions about this practically?
So how do we get around that with, I mean, not get around it, navigate that with the school counselors?
So great question. It still applies. So let's play that out. So it still applies to them. So one thing school counselors are going to hate, and I understand this, because they're sitting there worried about a legitimate thing, which is trust. Kids, they want kids to trust them. They want kids to know that you can go to them and trust them. So let's play this out the way it could happen organically. If you have a school counselor that's meeting with a student, and the student is just saying, like they all do about a lot of things, I'm confused, or I'm not sure what I am questioning my gender, I am questioning my sexuality, that would not trigger this statute. Okay? It's got to be a request for a name change or a pronoun change. This is them affirmatively saying, used to be Mary, I'm now Max. I used to be she, I'm now they. Okay? But in that conversation with the counselor, if that kid finally does say, I've made the decision, I am now Mary instead of Max, then the counselor, there is no exception for counselors. There is no confidentiality for counselors that would trump this. And I'm using trump as a verb now, not as a noun. I'm trying to stay away from presidential politics. Okay. But I feel like you got to announce that now. But with those counselors, if it was me, and I'll let you guys decide how to approach this. That's what I would do. Yeah, that's exactly what I'd say.
SB 1810, I need to let you know that I have to make an administrator aware of this, and they're going to contact them.
Yeah, I think you do tell them. That's exactly where I was going. I think you have to tell the kid. I'm not going to say you do under the law, but I think you're never going to have trust with that kid again, especially as a school counselor, unless you're open and obvious with them about why we're doing it and that we have to do it. I think you have to. I just think it's bad form as well. But yeah, I just think you just blame the law. I hate to say it. I just think you tell them, hey, the law requires now that I tell you this. And if you had a counselor, if you had a counselor that even had that kid that was questioning those things, I don't mind that counselor preemptively telling the kid, like, hey, just so you know, if you actually do decide, that would trigger my obligation to let people know. Yeah. What were you going to say? I cut you off.
Kind of like a kid that's talking about potential suicide. Like,
sure.
That you want to have the confidentiality, but at the end of the day,
your safety comes first.
But your safety comes first, and I'm bound to try to get you help.
And just be honest with the kid about your limitations. That, hey, I have to abide by the law just like everybody else, and the law says that if you tell me that, I'm going to have to make sure to disclose that to your parents. Now, by the way, a lot of kids aren't going to care. Like a lot of the situations we're talking about, their parents already know. So it's not going to be moving mountains when you tell them. Okay, did somebody else have a question?
Well,
do it.
I just need clarification. So like
sure.
Last year I had a first grader who was a girl and decided she wanted her name to go from Kylie to Kyle.
Okay.
So we call home, the mom says, no, we're going by her name is Kyle, but she very much wanted to be a boy.
Sure. So in that situation, I think it's going to be case by case. I'm going to give you my answer, but I don't think the law is clear on it. Let me show you why. So let me go 2 steps ahead. So let me show you this, because here's what makes that complicated. So we have the pronoun bill that was passed last year. And the pronoun bill in the state of Tennessee basically says this. It says, you can read it there, but it basically says no public school employee can be made to use what I'm going to call the new name, if it's a new gender identity. But the other thing, the way this law is written though, it's vice versa the same way though. We also cannot forbid an employee from using that, what I'm going to call the new name. It really comes down to it's the employee's choice. So because of that, what I typically recommend is I'd say, look, Mom, now first grader's harder. I mean, I think they get a lot of say in that. If we're talking about a middle schooler who, if we start calling them by a name they hate, it's going to be hard to teach them. It's going to be hard to get them to listen. What I'm going to probably do there is I'm going to say to Mom, hey, that sounds like you and your child are having a very serious thing going on, and we don't want to wade into personal family issues. We just want to teach. We just want to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to recommend our staff just use their last name. Because that way, if y'all want to deal with it at home and you deal with it how you want, it's your right as a parent, we just want to keep that kid focused at school. And if we can do that and keep the peace by just using the last name, that's what we're going to do. We just don't want to get into it, is basically the message. The 2 reasons I say that works. One is we have a Sixth Circuit case where I've told you guys about this before, where a college professor used that compromise. And basically, the Sixth Circuit said that's a fair compromise. So if you have an employee that has religious beliefs that says, I can't do that, I'm not going to use that new name, that's sincere, that's protected under Title VII. But if you have a student that says, hey, I don't want to be discriminated against, the Sixth Circuit has recognized that last name compromise is totally fine. is appropriate, it's fair, and it shouldn't offend either side. That's the Sixth Circuit's words. The other reason, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, is I don't think y'all want to spend time getting in that fight. And I don't think your teachers do either. If your teacher just wants 35 emails from a political action group about this, that sounds like they need to get a new job anyway. What I would say is if they just want to work on teaching and work on getting back to running a school, then let's just use the last name and move on, is my advice. Now, do you have to? No, but it's just going to make life easier. Is that fair? I didn't mean for that to sound preachy at the end, but you know what I'm getting at. You can tell I get tired of the number of people that, there's been some interesting parent conversations that I've had too. All right, we'll keep going. The other thing this statute does, let's go backwards, it's proactive in that we have to proactively, if you ask for the accommodation, tell the parents. It's also got what I call a reactive section to it, which is this part. It says, an employee of an LEA or public charter school shall also not knowingly give false or misleading information to the parent of a student regarding the student's gender identity or the student's intention to transition. Here, it gets more complicated. So let's say, let me give you a scenario where I think this would come up. Let's say you're the homeroom teacher at 5th grade, and you hear the kids start calling Max Mary. And you're like, well, that's weird. I thought that was Max. Okay, but Max or Mary, whatever, never comes up to you and says anything. Never comes up to an employee and asks for a different name, but their buddies are calling them that. You with me? That wouldn't trigger the proactive part because they have not asked an employee to change it. However, if that parent now sends an email to the homeroom teacher and says, hey, weird question, I know this is out of blue, but has my child been going by a different name at school, and have they been going by a different gender? Because I'm hearing from another parent they might be. We would have to tell them exactly what we heard. We would have to be completely honest because they're asking us a question about their student's gender identity at school. We'd have to give honest and open and transparent feedback about that, even if we're that school counselor. It goes back to that. So that school counselor makes sure they know, one other thing to say to them, their notes, the idea that those notes now could be part of a lawsuit has just greatly increased. So I would be super careful about what I wrote and what I write down, what I don't write down. Because like I said, just mentioned that earlier, we can be sued literally for not doing this. We can be sued for not making a prompt report to a parent. We can also be sued if we give misleading information to a parent about their student's gender identity that we knew otherwise to be false. Okay? So it's
or if we fail to disclose it upon being asked.
Correct. Yeah, because that's that reactive part. So there, you wouldn't have to proactively disclose it, but if you know something, if you've been hearing them, if they specifically ask that question, you got to give honest feedback. Yep. Now, what you don't have to do, this gets in the weeds a little bit, I don't think you have to, if you've heard it through 5 people, I'm not saying you have to provide hearsay, but you can give them what you know. So if you have heard Max being called Mary, then you would just give a Joe Friday answer of, I don't know what's going on. They've not asked me. However, I did hear them be referred to as Max a few times by their friends last week. Done. End of email. We're good. Why I worry about this lawsuit aspect is, let's just be super honest East Tennesseans right now. Okay? Born and raised, I'm a Sevier County guy if that counts. Any East Tennessee county I can think of, if we get pulled into court and the allegation is that we didn't provide prompt information to a parent about their student changing their gender, how do you think that goes with that jury? Any East Tennessee jury, I don't care, you pick the county. If there had any information that we did that, I promise you that I can't think of an East Tennessee jury that would treat us well. So just so you know, that lawsuit's got some teeth to it. Because you're thinking right now, what would be the damages? The damages would be what the jury decided you deserved. So that could be problematic.
Chris, so how does that burden going to have to work? Because anybody can say they ran into anybody in Walmart and they asked this teacher this and this teacher lied to them.
Sure.
It might not be an ounce of truth.
Right. So there it's going to be, if the only thing we got is the kids saying it, we got the teacher saying otherwise, they're not going to be able to meet their burden of proof because they've got the burden. If they're the plaintiff, they have to prove it. The counter to that would be, though, if we've got any information that it did happen and we have information through multiple witnesses or other people, then we got a problem. That's why it's going to be so important that if you do get that report from the teacher or the counselor, send that one email. That will literally save the whole day. Like, we win the whole case based on your email that you sent to the supervisor. I rarely would say that, but we would win it here. Okay?
That would go the the same too with the teacher. Like the teacher, if
Absolutely.
if they get an email from a, you need to loop in admin.
I would.
to that.
Yeah, in fact, I would probably just copy that teacher. I'd probably just, when I sent the email out, I'd just make it easier on everybody, copy the teacher and say, Miss, just to confirm, I'm copying Miss Smith. She told me today that this kid asked for this. I'm now letting you know that I called the parents at this time and made them aware.
I guess
Done.
that was meaning if
Oh.
parents reach out
Oh.
to the teacher
Oh,
and
yes.
ask that, then the teacher needs to reach to admin and say,
Absolutely. Anytime you've got something, great question. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Anytime you got something that could trigger this, I do want to make sure admin knows that I've even disclosed information under that reactive part, which is what you're getting at, right? Yeah, absolutely. Now, I also want to say this makes it harder. If it's the kid making the request for a name change, I do think the law is clear that the administrator has to tell the parents. So go back to those school counselors. I'm not saying this I'm not picking on them. They might be the one that wants to tell the parent. They cannot. It's got to be, they have to tell administration, and then we're supposed to be the messenger on the name change request or the pronoun request. Told you guys I'd wake you up. All right, let's.
What's the legal definition of prompt?
Great question. There's not one in here, so my advice is going to be this. You want it to where if I took it to court later, that I'm going to have a jury thinking, oh, that sounds fair. And that's honestly literally the way I'm thinking it. So my answer is, if you get it in the afternoon, I think by that same afternoon or the next morning would be fine. It's not a safety threat, so I'm fine going the next day. It's not like a report of abuse. If you get it that morning, I would love for you to give their parents the report by that afternoon. Okay, but certainly by the next school day at the same time would be the longest I would go. Because again, I can't show you that in the statute. I'm just telling you the way I'm thinking about juries, and I've tried enough cases to know that would make me feel comfortable going into court. Okay, now with that said, let's do a scenario. All right, I'll let you guys, you know how group work works. So I'm going to read this to you. You talk amongst yourselves, and we'll come back. You just started as the head principal at Milton Friedman Middle School. On September 1st, one of your school counselors, Valerie, knocks on your office door asking to have a quick chat. Valerie closes the door behind her, sits across from you, and then says, a student I've been meeting with for a few years officially came out to me today as transgender. The student was born a boy and named Henry and now wants to go by Holly. I told the student I have to think through all this and left it at that. I don't feel comfortable calling the student Holly, and I also worry about the student's father finding out there is a history of abuse, and I know DCS has been in that home more than once. All right, so just want you guys, you know the legality of it. Walk me through what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, and in what order. All right, talk amongst yourselves. Okay, let's talk. Yes, sir.
So Valerie's not legally required to call Henry Holly, but you would like for her to make a reasonable accommodation. You do, however, have to call the parents.
So repeat that, because people were still talking, so repeat it. Go ahead.
So Valerie's not legally obligated to call Henry Holly.
Right.
You would like for Valerie to make a reasonable accommodation, be it a last name or some sort of other reasonable accommodation, just to try and find a middle ground that's reasonable for both.
Save us all some time. Yep, love that.
You, however, as the admin, do have to call, even if Dad is a jerk.
Yep, so because you didn't read anything in that statute, did you, about exceptions? There is no exception. It says shall. Okay, that means shall means you got to.
Can you call mom, and then do you also let DCS know that being concerned with them being in the home, there's probably a caseworker, hey, just giving you a heads up, this is what's transpired?
Absolutely. So let's talk through that for a second. Is there anything under the law that if you have a child welfare concern, is there anything that would ever stop you from being able to disclose that to DCS? No, in fact, I would argue you have a right to do it. So if you, especially here, and you nailed it, if you know here they've already been there, if you call DCS, I'm not even asking for the hotline. I'm asking for what? Is there a case manager still on this kid? And I want to talk to the case manager. That's what I'm asking for, right? Now, I think you can absolutely do that. And if you do, say you get this report at 10 a.m., you call DCS at 11, I might tell DCS, hey, I'm not going to call Dad until about 5, right? I'm going to wait, so give you guys time to get your ducks in a row, because DCS doesn't always have their ducks in a row. Okay, now go back to this. So you also asked me another question, which I think is important. The statute is also silent as to what does that mean, right? Like, go back to the first statute. It just says, school administrator shall report the student's request to the student's parent. Doesn't say parents. So I think as long as you tell either parent, you have complied with the statute. It's singular. So if you there want to call mom,
Dad, that's a marital issue, not our issue.
Yeah, it's not my problem. I told a parent. Yep.
So in case of divorce, does custodial parent make a difference or not?
It really doesn't. Now, I'd say this. I still think you can do it in a situation where if they're divorced, you can just tell one. I would be very, so I can tell you you're complying with the law there. You might be starting a World War III though. If you got news this big, let's just play that out for a second. If you got news this big and you tell one divorced parent, not the other, you're asking for absolute war when they find out you didn't call them. So there might be a situation there where, and I'm not talking about a situation where dad's the abuser. I'm saying just two divorced parents. I probably am going to go the extra step there just to make my life easier, candidly, right? Now let's go back to that. So could you call one parent here? Absolutely. And in situations where they're not divorced, I don't think there's any question you can just tell one. Even if they're separated, I just don't think there's any argument you'd have to tell more than one ever. Okay? Let me stay with this for a second. So hypothetically, I know this is going to sound really hard to believe, what if DCS doesn't do anything? Okay? See, that's just, I got to know my audience. I got to know my audience on that one, right? When I was asking another group, I heard another great idea on this that I think is a good idea. There's nothing that says, let's say you do that report. Let's say you call dad. Or no, let's say here you call mom. And let's say you call and you just say to start the conversation, hey, just so you know, I do have SRO Smith here with me. He's just listening in case you have questions. This is a complicated matter. In case you have questions about next steps or, anything legal. And you're just sort of sending a message there that, hey, if you don't mind your P's and Q's, if you do anything to this kid, we've already let law enforcement know what's going on. They're probably aware, and if you decide you're going to be a complete scumbag and hurt a kid, they're already on notice of maybe what's going on. They're going to be there pretty quick. It's the message you're sending. It's subtle, but I think it sometimes be effective just to sort of remind them the SROs are there and watching. All right, I think that'd be fine. Anything else? All right, so here, bottom line is we still have to report. There's no exception because we know the history of abuse, but we can take other steps to mitigate the chances of harm, right? All right. What time is it? I don't want to take you guys too long. Okay, we're still good. I'm going to run through these quickly, and I really do mean quickly because like I said, as of right now, I'm only giving you an update on the new Title IX changes in case they do change in the middle of the school year. I don't think they will, but I want you guys to be prepared if they don't. I want you to have these slides, okay? So I'm not going to hit on all of them, but I'm going to hit on a couple. One big change, if these do get approved eventually, is this one. It seems like a small one, but it's got big implications. The new changes would change this from severe and pervasive to severe or pervasive. So to be actionable as harassment or hostile environment, now it's got to be severe and pervasive. Change that to or, you see the big difference, right? It greatly expands the type of stuff that would fall under that. Let me give you a really easy example. Let's say you have an 11th grader and he's just super awkward, right? Just a super awkward, I'm sure we have none of those at either high school. And so I'm sure this kid's super awkward and he decides, can't hardly wait style, that he's been in love with the same girl since kindergarten. And by gosh, this week on Monday is going to be the day he professes his love to her. So he writes her a sonnet. He's real smooth. He dresses up, maybe gets his sport coat, buys some chocolates, Forrest Gump style, and he shows up unannounced at her car because what more would any woman want, right? And he's at her car. She walks out, has no idea who this dude is. He reads his sonnet, and she politely, and I mean politely, just lets him down easy, okay? He doesn't threaten her. He doesn't say anything that is in any way scary. It's just awkward. I'm just going to keep using the word awkward. Is that harassment under Title IX? Why not? Is it severe? Nope. Is it pervasive? You see where I'm going, right? That's Monday. He goes home that night, Monday night, and he thinks to himself, no, this has to be a mistake. We're meant to be together. Okay, I know she's just going to go home tonight and think, that was the love of my life. I'm going to change my mind. And he shows up at her car Tuesday, says the same thing, and she says, no again, no thank you. Are we there yet? We're getting there. What if he shows up Wednesday? Now we're there. 3 days in a row, not taking no for an answer. He's not being aggressive, so it's still not severe. But now we're in pervasive, right? Now we're in a situation where even anybody subjectively or objectively would think that's creepy, right? There's something there. She comes to you the next day and says, hey, this dude's been following me around and staying at my car and won't take no for an answer on Thursday. We're going to have to address it now. Whereas before it wouldn't fall under Title IX because it's never been severe. Now it's just pervasive, and that gets us there. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's just a classic example. Even these, what I'll call, or if it's like a kid who just keeps using language he shouldn't use. So it's never severe. Nobody ever feels like he's gonna follow through with it. The girl's telling you that too. But he just keeps using just inappropriate comments. That pervasiveness gets you there now too. Okay? Questions? All right, let's keep going. All right, one that I think we can go ahead and start doing, and I think is probably going to keep us out of trouble with the feds on multiple angles, is going to be the pregnancy con. So pregnancy has always been, according to the courts, protected under Title IX. Can you see why? Like, there's only one sex that can get pregnant, right? That's the last time I checked. So if only one sex can get pregnant, and we treat kids poorly who are pregnant, that means we are treating only one sex poorly. That's why the courts have traditionally said pregnancy is protected under Title IX. All right. What we also know is that the predominant stat is that 70% of girls who get pregnant before high school graduation drop out. That's a huge number. 70% is a big number. So I'll defend the feds on this one. The feds are basically saying, hey, if that's the number nationwide, then we got to start changing what we're doing. Like, that's too big of a number. Right? So now what the feds want us to do on pregnancy is they want us to be proactive rather than reactive. What do I mean by that? If you find out that there's a girl in your school who is pregnant, we are now not supposed to wait for her to come to us for help. We're supposed to go to her and ask if she needs it. That's the biggest difference. It's not reactive anymore, it's proactive. I don't think it's a good idea that the Title IX coordinator goes and meets with them, because let's be honest for a second, this is going to be the most stressful time of that girl's life. I mean, I can't imagine what pressure they're under. We're going to send, all of a sudden, they've never met somebody, and we say, hey, let's talk about this new thing happening. And that's going to be a terrible meeting, right? Let's use a school nurse, let's use a counselor, somebody they know, to have that meeting and obviously document it. But let me just ask you guys this question. If you have that meeting with a pregnant student, what are the type of accommodations we could offer? What's reasonable accommodation? There you go. What'd you say? You said it.
Extra trips to the
Absolutely. No, I think that's a really easy one, right? Like, we're going to have to give you maybe easier access or a permanent hall pass, something like that. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. We might have to do the accommodation thing we talked about earlier about using, if you want to use a private bathroom, right? That's fine too. Yeah.
So if you do that and she says, well, my parents don't know, we've had this issue last year.
I know.
We want to make sure.
Yep.
Legally, we still have the right to contact the parents.
We do.
Correct?
We do.
And you have to- okay.
Yeah, so there's old FERPA analysis on this from USDOE. And you know where I'm going here, so I don't want to go too far in the weeds, but always got to remember that FERPA, the right to privacy under FERPA until the kid turns 18 is really the parent's right. So anything that we know that's been disclosed to us is a FERPA confidential piece of information, which means the parents would always have a right to know it if they asked. And there's certainly nothing that would stop us from telling the parents, even a school nurse. What's hard about that is that school nurse is thinking about HIPAA, and HIPAA and then state guidelines on medical do work differently on pregnancy, especially if you're 16. So that's why you're getting at that, right? It's totally different. But in just the FERPA world, which is a school record world, it is absolutely disclosable. Yeah, I know, it's fun stuff, right? All right.
Where do we look at,
Either one.
this information? Obviously,
Sure.
at the high school level, there's no telling how many kids in a year you
Mhm.
hear
Mhm.
stories of
Mhm.
may be pregnant.
Mhm.
Like, especially I've had kids in school and high school for like 6 or 7 years. They're like, I think so-and-so's pregnant. That's
Sure.
the word. Where do we?
I don't think we have.
Do we start investigating that?
No.
To see if they're pregnant?
Great question. No, I think we have to know. I think this is a kid who we know is pregnant, or we've heard from multiple sources is pregnant. I'm not talking about a kid because again, that can be a fun question, right? Like, hey, lady, are you pregnant? I literally used to work with a guy that asked somebody that we worked with if she was pregnant, and she was not. That was a bad day, okay? So no, we really don't want to do that. We better know or be pretty darn close to knowing. I'm saying 90% sure, right? This is not one where we're acting on a rumor. Now, that's a legit question. That's a great question.
So it's a Wednesday, and you find this information out and have that conversation, and then the student says, hey, I'm going to let my parents know this weekend.
Okay.
Is that something that,
Sure.
So you just don't call, like you're...
You don't have to. No, I'm not saying it's not a mandatory report thing, but if you...
Early up on the hill, buddy. Partying up on the air base?
I'm moving on. Let's go back to the accommodations. So we got permanent bathroom breaks, and I'm joking when I say permanent. What other types of accommodations could we offer?
Extended time between classes.
Extended time between classes, that's a great one. If it's a multi-story building, maybe access to the elevator. If you had an elevator, that's fine.
Something set up for frequent doctor's visits.
There you go. Maybe we're going to modify the attendance policy. We're going to modify the attendance policy. We might even take, because you're pregnant, you might just, there's some days you just don't, you're not really capable of coming in and you're not going to the doctor. We're going to give you more parent notes. I mean, I don't know. I'm just throwing these out there. What if the kid develops gestational diabetes? What if the kid develops complications to the pregnancy, which a doctor has said requires bed rest? Now that might be an accommodation not just under Title IX, but what else? 504. In fact, I would rather write a 504 plan for that temporarily because 504 gives us more flexibility. For example, if a kid goes on 3 months homebound because of pregnancy, I'm going to do a 504 plan. That 504 team is going to put them homebound, and guess what I don't have to do then? I don't have to do my 30-day review because that's a waste of time. Let's just be honest. Like if you do a traditional homebound, just send them home without a 504, why do you need to do a 30-day review on a kid who you know is on bed rest for 3 months? Like that's just a waste of paperwork. 504 team can just put them there and set the meeting for after they deliver. So we're done. It's way cleaner paperwork-wise. Saves you time. Yep.
Can I just go back and ask one more question?
Oh, anything.
Notifying parents.
Sure.
So let's say
This is on gender identity?
Well, no.
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, you're fine.
So let's say a kid goes to the counselor and they tell the counselor that they're having sex.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. We tell the parents, right?
Oh, did you say fourth grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question there that child is not even age of consent. Okay. So that to me would be reported as probably we're going to let the SRO and DCS know as well if they're having sex in fourth grade.
Counselors just like to say
they transfer from Rossville?
Let's be real. It's a class.
Oh, no, I get it. That's fair. Yeah.
You mentioned letting the student tell the parent, but is it a mandatory, like we notify the parent?
No, it's not. That's what we were saying. It's not mandatory. It's not mandatory that we have. I know. No, it's not mandatory. I can't now. If you feel like you believe the parent should know, which a lot of people are going to say they should, I get that. But I can't show you anywhere in the law that it's a mandatory report.
So you can't. I mean, you could go either way.
You really could. Yeah. Yeah, you really could. Now, there's one catch, and the catch would be similar to the transgender bill. I'm coming there in just a second. If a parent called you and asked, then you would have to tell them because they have full rights to any information we do. Right. So that would be the difference. Like we couldn't hide that if they asked. Yep.
So, pregnant girl says she had a miscarriage.
Okay.
Didn't go to the doctor.
Yep.
Not feeling good.
Yep. Oh yeah, I would disclose that. I would disclose that because that's a health risk, right? That's a clear health risk. And even if you had let's play this farther. Let's say you had the girl that's still pregnant, but she's having some pretty significant health symptoms beyond just pregnancy or elevated blood pressure, you name it. I think we have to tell them. I mean, anytime there's a health risk, we have to let the parents know. Or even if you had a kid who's pregnant and they're telling you, I'm not receiving any care. I think that also puts them in danger. So I think that's a mandatory report too. Anything that's going to put the kid in danger that you know in your gut says that, we're going to have to tell parents. Yep. Okay. One other thing about this, real quick, is that it also now, the feds take the position that parents are protected under Title IX. I'm talking about student parents. Okay, so play that out. If we had a situation where girl has a baby and now she wants to still keep attending school, we might have to accommodate that as well. What are some types of accommodations that would be parent related that we might have to do? And this, by the way, would apply to the dad too, and I can explain why. If we just all of a sudden said, hey, under Title IX, we're going to give parent accommodations, we're only doing that for girls. See how that would also be on the basis of sex? If we're doing it for parents, it's got to be for both. So let's say a parent comes in and says, I need accommodations. What can we offer there? There you go. Yeah, the same way we allow employees to express breast milk, we'd have to give them the same privacy, same area for the student. Yep. What else? What about attendance? Right now, if we take a doctor's note, who's the doctor's note for? For the student, right? It's for the student. Now, if that kid needs to take their own baby in, the doctor's note is from the pediatrician for who? So we're now going to take two types of doctor's notes. We're going to take one if the kid gets care, and two if the student themselves gets care. There's no question we'd have to modify for that. And that could be for dad. If baby goes into the hospital at Children's for 5 days because they have the croup in their oxygen tent, and dad wants to miss, I think the fair and reasonable thing to do is take that as an excused absence. Yeah. Okay? All right? Let's keep going. I'm not going to hit on that one. I'm not going to hit on that one. I want to hit on some of these. This one, I think, number 6, is something that I hope goes through because I think this will make your lives easier. And I think you can go ahead and start incorporating this. A lot of you are doing it anyway, and I'm saying that in a good way. All right? Right now, the feds are trying to cure a problem here, and I'll give them credit. It's a practical problem. It's not a political one. It's a practical one. Right now, under the way the 2020 regs work, is if you have a kid that comes in, let's say that 11th grader I was talking about earlier with the sonnet, right? And that girl comes to you, and you know you could nip this in the bud without causing World War III by doing what? You bring the boy in, and what would you say to him? Just stay away from her. Stop. Like, just, hey, forget what she looks like. I'm going to tell her to avoid you, and just don't be around each other, right? We call that a no contact, right? You guys do those all the time. Under the 2020 regs, if you do that, it still doesn't absolve us of liability. Under the new ones, it would. So if you do an informal agreement and the kids both agree to it, you don't have to do a Title IX investigation. You don't have to worry about your liability under Title IX because the feds will say that you have acted reasonably and it's cut off with that agreement. So that's great, right? Now, let's be clear. You can't do that with the big stuff, right? And I'm not trying to be mean here, but if a girl comes in and says, I've been sexually assaulted, we're not going to say, hey, let's just make an agreement on that, right? I mean, I'm just clearly, right? We just got to use common sense. And I love that the feds had to put this in there, but we also can't do it if it's a complaint about an employee. So if a girl comes in and says, hey, Mr. Smith is sexually harassing me, we can't go, well, let's just make an agreement on that, right? I mean, the common sense tells us that's not okay. But if you got the kid that's writing sonnets, that's just, telling that she's not being threatening, he's not being aggressive, she's not scared of him, she just wants him away from her, he agrees to stay away, she agrees to stay away, we're now done. Have them sign it, and you have absolved yourself of liability. The other thing I like about that is, let's think about this practically. Then if he violates that, you've given him a directive. What's the directive? Stay away from her. He's agreed to it in writing. You send it to his dad to make sure his dad knows he's going to tell him too. If he violates it, do we have to treat that as a Title IX issue? No, we can just punish him for what? Violating a directive from administration. So we don't have to do a Title IX investigation on that either. We just pop him for violating our directive. Makes everything a lot less paperwork, everything a lot easier. So certainly use those no contact agreements, okay? Not going to bother you with this one. This is more like just evidence issues. This is about procedure. One thing I will remind of, and like I said, you guys can have these in case it changes and you'll be able to pull back and look review, but I don't think it will. One thing that I think the feds reminded us of with number 10 that is already baked into the law to just be thinking about is they took a little section to say, hey, don't forget basically that retaliation student to student could put you in a liability situation. Let me explain what I mean. Keep using that 11th grader. Let's say that kid gets the no contact order. You meet with him. You give him that Southern prayer meeting where only he's praying, right? He goes out of there. He's mad. He knows now that the love of his life doesn't really love him, and he's just heartbroken, right? Now he's mad at her. So on Xbox Live on Saturday night, he's talking to his buddies playing NCAA 25, and he basically says something to the effect of, this girl is a jerk. I told her I loved her, and she went and told the principal on me. So now his 5 buddies go back to school on Monday, and they start making her life a living hell. They start bothering her. They start sending her mean Snapchats. They start writing stuff on her locker. They whisper stuff under their breath as they walk by, like really crude comments. And now she comes and reports that to you. Now we still got a Title IX issue. Why? Because she had a right to report it. She has a right not to be retaliated against because she reported it. Now, does that mean we get to cure bullying with a magic wand? No. But we have to take some steps to document how we're addressing it. So we got to just document that we tried. The standard is deliberate indifference. You just got to show you were not deliberately indifferent. So you met with the boys, you put the fear of God in them, said don't do that again. That doesn't work, they keep it up, you suspend them. Just show me that you tried. Even if it doesn't work, just show me that you tried, we still win. Make sense? But just don't forget that student-to-student aspect. It could be retaliation even if it's kids. All right, I want to hit one more thing just for fun before we take a break. And I told you I just start with the really easy political stuff, okay? So arming educators. In the state of Tennessee, it passed. So we do have a bill where it is possible for an educator to pack heat, as we say, in a school. It's possible. Fiction, all teachers can now carry. That is not the case. What has to happen before you can carry in Tennessee all 5 of these things right here? All right, one, if you even come to us and ask us about it, the first thing I'm going to ask, the first thing Tim or anybody else is going to ask is, do you already have a valid handgun carry permit? If you don't have that, there's not even reason to talk. Go get that from Tennessee first. One other theme to this statute that a lot of people didn't see is it's all on the employee's dime. Okay? If you want to get a handgun carry permit, we're not paying for that. That's on you. If you need to get a new updated TBI check because your last one was 3 years ago, that's on you. You're going to have to pay for it. If you want to get a mental examination and show yourself is clear under the DSM, you got to pay for it. If you want to get the school police training, you got to pay for it. The school has no obligation to pay for any of this. Okay? So that's all on the employee's dime. And then after you do all those, you have to get a triplicate approval. This is why I'm talking to principals about it. 3 people that have to approve it are director of schools, the principal for the school in which the employee works, and the local, basically, head law enforcement officer, so sheriff. All right, all 3. Any one of those 3 has the power under the statute to say no. Any one. And the statute doesn't even give guidance on it. It basically just gives you full discretion, because you know that person better than they do, to say no. So if you get hey, they've done all these, they've shown it to you, there's just something in your gut that says, I don't trust Tommy, check no. That's it. Okay? The other thing, if we do have somebody that gets approved under this to know, is it's not public. So if you end up, all 3 of those people approve it, you have somebody in your school that's carrying, the only people that are going to know is you, your admin team at the school, your SRO, some people from central office, and the sheriff, and that's it. It's almost like the air marshal concept. Even public records, we don't disclose it. That we know there's air marshals, nobody knows who they are. So if you have employees that are carrying, there will be no public disclosure of it. And in fact, we're supposed to keep it secret at the school. Okay?
If they tell anyone,
that would be a problem. We're probably going to revoke their ability to have if they start telling people. Because one of the things that under this statute that's really clear is that it's supposed to be private. There's a reason the board, I'll say this, there's a reason boards don't approve it. Because they don't want it to get out. They want the least amount of people possible to know. Because otherwise it defeats the purpose according to the legislature. Now I'll say this is not a pro or anti. You guys know I don't get in politics. And I ate lunch with Ben Torres recently, TSBA General Counsel, and he's friends with people that are other general counsels in different states. And so there's states out west that have had bills like this for a while. States where there's a big gap between how quickly emergency responders can get there. We might not have SROs, so you might need faculty to be armed in case something happens, right? He'll tell you that in talking to those lawyers, he asked me, what's the number one problem you've had? Y'all could probably guess this. It's not intentional use of the gun. What do you think it is? Yeah, it's literally like leaving it in the bathroom. Hey, a third grader found a Glock in the toilet, okay? Or it's somebody left their drawer unlocked and there was a daggum 38 in there, right? That's the stuff that scares me about this bill. That's it. It's just, do people really know how to secure their weapon and make sure they're treated? Because when you go, and you guys know this, people that are in law enforcement, they are hammered over and over and over and over again. Never let that out of your sight. Never, if somebody even touches it. If you see an officer and you see somebody even their hand get close to that weapon, watch how closely they guard it. It's like a reflex. It's going to be hard to get educators to get that reflexive. I'll put it that way. So that's the only thing about it in a big way that scares me. All right, any questions about this one? Why don't we take 5 or 10 minutes? We'll come back.
Hey, guess what?
Me.
Hope Holloway,
Oh, Holloway.
$50. Stephanie Sherwood, $100.
Okay. See, people are throwing money around. That's a good way to start this back. I like it.
It's a violation of Title IX.
Oh, no question about it. I wasn't going to mention it.
I feel discriminated.
All right.
Just to let you know, that gift card is not
Oh, no.
out of county funds. It's from U-Trust.
That was a good disclaimer. All right, guys. So now what I want to shift gears. There's 2 statutes. I'm going to show you some others too. But I think there's two statutes, especially from our principals, that are going to have a pretty significant effect this year discipline-wise. Discipline-wise. So bear with me. Right now, do a review with me. How many zero tolerance offenses are there in the state of Tennessee? Mandatory zero tolerance. Count them. You can just name them if you want. What's that? Drugs, 1. Yep.
Assault on a staff member.
Aggravated assault on a staff member, 2. What's that? Weapons, 3. There you go. Threat of mass violence. Threat of mass violence. Okay. Stay with. No, that's fair. I understood what you meant. Destruction and violence are both bad. What does that last one mean? That last one just passed last year, so we've only had that for a year, but we've gotten some time from it, right? What does it mean when I say threat of mass violence? What does that mean?
Phone calls, social media posts.
Any communication where I'm communicating that. What am I communicating though?
Which ultimately you're going to do harm.
There you go, to 2 or more people, right? I'm going to do serious bodily injury or death to 2 or more people. So hypothetically, there you go. Yeah. Oh yeah. You could say cheer squad. You say I'm going to take out the football team. These 2 brothers that I hate. I mean that would all work, right? I even had one last year. I'll give you an example of how this can sort of play out, right? I had a kid who, I'm trying to remember the exact scenario. He had a group project that they were supposed to do. He's a middle school kid. Remember, I don't tell stories of the county I'm standing in. It's just not an Ashland County story. His middle school project, and his group decided they were going to get together for a study session on Zoom. Okay, totally fine. That's normal nowadays. They get on the Zoom call. This is an 8th grader. And he gets on, and he got mad at one of the kids in his group that day about something. I don't remember what it was about. And all of a sudden, he walks out from a room on the Zoom camera, and he's holding a pretty significantly sized .45. And he basically says, and we got a recording of it, he basically says, hey, I'm going to take you out. You can't talk. He starts just going off on the one kid. Okay, so right now, it's the weird part, is it right now a threat of mass violence? No, because he's just threatening that kid. Now, he's going to jail for making a pretty significant threat with a weapon, but it's not a zero tolerance offense yet. How it became zero tolerance is what happens next. There's another kid whose screen at that time, I got the video of this, is empty because he had gone to the bathroom. So he comes back from the bathroom, and the first thing he sees is, kid 1 waving a .45 around, talking crazy. And he says a normal thing, which is what an 8th grader would say, is, what's going on? And that kid says, hey, if you don't shut your mouth, I'll take you out too. Now is it a threat of mass violence? Yes, because he's made a threat of using a firearm on 2 or more kids. So now we got zero tolerance. Okay, yep.
Was it ZT because of the school project aspect of it? They were using
He was making it a threat. Great question. He was making a threat he was going to do it at school. He was bringing it to school. I should have said that. That's my fault. He was making a threat he was going to come tomorrow, and he was going to bring that gun, and he was going to shoot the kid, shoot both of them. Sorry. That's great. If he would have said, that's a great question. If he would have said, I'm going to come over to your house tonight, it might be a juvenile charge, but it actually would not be a threat of mass violence because he's not saying he's going to do it at school or related to school. Yep, that's a good point. All right.
What if he would have said, I'm going to kill you and then kill myself?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think it would work. Yeah, I think it would work. There's nothing in the statute that indicates that it would be taken away because of the self-harm aspect. So no, I think it would work. Yeah, I think it would work. All right, so now that's the review. Those are the zero tolerance offenses. Now what I'm going to tell you is the state this year, after we only had that zero tolerance as it was for 1 year, they've already changed it. Okay? So now what's going to be saying this. We got this new public chapter 882. I'm going to basically say what it says. Now if you get a kid who makes a threat of mass violence, you are allowed as the administrator to suspend them pending investigation and pending threat assessment. So every one of those now, we're doing it anyway. We got to do a threat assessment. After the threat assessment, that's when it's determined whether it's zero tolerance. And you can imagine how, right? If the threat assessment team comes back and says it was a serious threat or a valid threat, it's now zero tolerance. If the threat assessment team, though, says it's not, says it's a transient threat, it is now not zero tolerance. You can still punish for it. That's what the last part says. They can't be expelled now, so it's not an expulsion. You could still punish, though. You could say, hey, we don't even joke about that. You're going to get, you name it, punishment. You can still do that. But the bottom line is it's no longer an expulsion event if the threat assessment team says otherwise. So now let's break that down. Think about what's happened with that is something, there's an effect to that I don't think anybody's realized, so let's say it out loud. Under state law, there's 2 agencies every time that have to be part of your threat assessment team. School officials and who else? Law enforcement. So what the state law says is law enforcement and school personnel have to be part of it. Then we can do it however we want, it's usually SRO. But now, think about that. For the first time in the history of Tennessee educational law that I know of, law enforcement is going to be part of the decision as to what school punishment is. Think about that. If law enforcement decides it's transient, law enforcement is deciding with us that it's not zero tolerance. Vice versa, if law enforcement decides it's serious, law enforcement is having a big role there in school discipline. That's the difference between an expulsion and, 10 days, 20 days, I don't know, whatever you decide. And that's a pretty big effect, guys. That's the first time it's ever happened. So be thinking about that. Okay? Yep. Oh, either one.
What if school personnel and law enforcement?
I know where you're going. Disagree? Man, I'm going to be really worried about that one. So there's nothing in the law that indicates how that works. It's really how we decide we set it up. So if you, as part of the only thing the statute says on threat assessment is that law enforcement has to be part of it. There's also I'm answering that in a long-winded way, okay? There's also parts of that law that basically say we may ask other agencies to be involved. One such agency is the DA's office. So if we want them involved, they can be part of it. Another is DCS. I haven't seen a long line of us asking them to be part of it, but we could. I say that because it's how we do it. So if you decide that part of our threat assessments, I'm making this up, 3 people, one is an assistant principal, one is a principal, and one is SRO, it would just be majority vote. What's going to worry me about that, though, you imagine, this is the lawyer coming out, right? Let's say we get it wrong. Let's say you got 2 votes, and 2 people on the school side say transient, not a valid threat, but the law enforcement officer checks, he thinks it is a threat. And let's say worst case scenario happens, what is that? Kid comes back and does something, guys, that's going to be a bad day. So I'm going to be super worried for so many reasons about disagreeing with law enforcement on that. What I'm going to recommend is it needs to be consensus. That the school and law enforcement need to agree on whatever it is. If that's transient, that's fine. Or if it's serious threat, I'm going to say I'm not going to feel super comfortable if we got on paper somewhere that we're disagreeing with law enforcement. And if things go bad, whatever agency checked no is going to have a bad year. Okay? Bad life. Just being honest. I know that's really extreme, but it's just the facts. Okay? Yes?
So, obviously, we've already posted that in the code of conduct
Great.
as zero tolerance offense.
Yep.
Can I go back and just put a little amendment?
You can. That just
verbiage?
You could actually say it's a zero tolerance offense subject to threat assessment. You could even just say that.
Okay.
That would work. All right. Any questions on this one? Let me also and Kim's going to want me to say this. You'll see where I'm going in a second. Let's start talking about. I always give you guys a hard time. There's nobody better at dividing the number 10 than school principals, and that includes Albert Einstein. Okay. If I come to any of you in February and ask you how many days certain kids have, you can tell me that better than your kids' birthdays, okay? And I say that with love, okay? But let's say it's October, and let's say I've got a student who is bipolar, and that student makes a threat of blowing up the school. You with me? And I'll go ahead and put that kid out, and by the time we get the threat assessment back, it's been 4 days. And we do the threat assessment and we determine invalid threat. We determine he didn't mean it. Now you've done what? You've just burned 4 days and it's October. So we're going to have to move quicker on those threat assessments because you are going to run out of days, guys. I'm just being honest with you. Because you definitely can't put that kid back. You know this. Just from a community perspective, can you imagine putting the kid back before the threat assessment's done? There'd be a lot of criticism over that. So you know you got to get that done. But I'm also worried that you're going to burn through days with certain kids with 504s and certain kids with IEPs before you even blink. It's going to be November and you're already at 10.
Can you touch on formal and informal removals?
Yeah, sure. So you mean like ISS first?
Yeah, but putting them in, even
Yep.
if you just
Yeah.
call and they go home.
Right.
they still
Oh, I know where
get
you're going.
documented
Yes.
all of that.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So if you do, not that anybody in here has ever done this, but if you say, if it's 10:30 in the morning, we all of a sudden get notice of that threat, and you call mom and say, I need you to come pick them up. That's a suspension, guys. Because remember, what people forget is that manifestation is not triggered by suspension. Manifestation is triggered by a change of placement, where we as a school system are making a change of placement decision outside of an IEP team. So it doesn't have to be, I gave them OSS. you are changing their placement by telling them they can't have access to that academic day on that day. So you've triggered the statute. Now, I'm going to get a little creative on one. I don't think you're going to mind. There is a way to do that if, let's say, well, I'll tell you what. Let's just do a scenario, and I'll show you. At 10 p.m. on a Thursday night in February, you receive this text message from a parent at your school. You need to get on Instagram. I'd send you one of those screenshots if I knew how to do that. But all these kids are talking now. Some of the 11th grader named Joey just said he was going to blow up the school tomorrow using an image of a mushroom cloud to make his point. When you check Instagram, you see the post exactly as described, and you start receiving more texts about the same as the minutes pass. Joey Randolph is an 11th grader at your school, and you know Joey has been suspended a total of 7 days already this school year. You didn't even have to look that up for some reason. Okay. To make matters even worse, Joey has a 504 plan due to bipolar disorder and a behavior plan. So I want you guys to talk amongst yourselves, talk about this new law, but also talk about what you already know about 504, about what comes with that, about IEP, right, if you had one, and walk me through your next steps. All right, talk amongst yourselves. All right, guys, let's talk. Okay, somebody wants to volunteer. What are we doing? Not about once, getting awkward. What's that? Call Kim Tao. No matter what time of night. That's what she just said. She wanted me to tell y'all, no matter what time of night, call Kim Tao. I know. I'll play it. Anybody, who wants to do it? Dan, you haven't talked to me all day.
Well, you know, Robbie's been disagreeing.
I knew I could mess with him. I could guilt him into talking.
So, I mean, first thing, you know, with 7 days.
Somebody told me to send them to you, is what I heard. Just play it. Go ahead.
With 7 days, I mean, you got some in the hole. So if it's a, you know, I mean, like you could call the parent and tell them to keep the kid home.
Okay, but if you do that, so let's play. Can I stay there with you for a second? If you call the parent and you say, Johnny is not coming to school tomorrow, like Kim said, that counts as a day. Sure. Right now, can I?
But I'd rather get 8.
Oh yes, for sure. No, we're gonna have to do it. But can I give you Kim? Kim, cover up your ears on this one because I'm going to throw another option out. Okay, it's getting a little more creative. So if you do what I'm about to say, I want you to be careful how you do it. Okay, but if you were to call the parent in this situation, and by the way, are we calling the parents first or who are we calling first? We're calling law enforcement, and I'm not going to call the parents until after what's done. There you go. I want law enforcement to call me back and say they've done what? Done a well check, and they've looked for what? Access to weapons. I don't want to call the parent first because what are they going to do? 710s, they're going to hide the weapons. All right. I want them to be able to be surprising the kid, not the other way around. So let's just say that's happened and it's cleared. Law enforcement calls us. We call the parent. I might ask instead of telling. I might ask mom first and say, "Hey, what's your plan with Joey tomorrow?" And if she says, "Oh, I'm not bringing him. I'm gonna go get him. I'm gonna go get him some help and go see a counselor." Oh, you know what? If you do that, we'll go ahead and excuse the absence. See the difference? In that situation, I'm not telling you what to do. I've just asked the question, what are you going to do with Joey tomorrow? And if she says I'm holding him out, we excuse the absence, that does not count as a day because we have not changed the placement. So just if they walk into that, take advantage of it. That's all I'm saying. Now, let's say change it. Let's say mama says, "Oh, he's coming to school. I got to go to work." Then we're saying, "No, he's not." Right? But we'll ask him first. Yeah.
So we need evidence of that.
Yep.
We need a parent note or it ain't going to matter.
That'd be great. A parent note would be great, and just document.
It says on the phone, and then.
But just put it in your notes.
If we lose up the days, that day is not going to look.
No, yes, agreed. But just put it in your notes. Say as part of your write-up for it, because you're going to do a write-up. Say I called mom at this time. She immediately indicated to me that she's going to hold him out. I told her we'd be happy to give an excused absence. Done. Right. So I'll take your documentation any day over that. It's part of your other report. Yep. I'll take a parent note too. I'm with you.
At some point, we also need to make sure this is actually Joey and not somebody that's
held his account. Great question. So part of what we're asking law enforcement to do though is help us with that. Like to determine they're going to confront Joey. They're going to say, "Was this you?" If Joey then says to law enforcement, because we're going to talk to them first. If Joey then says to law enforcement, "No, somebody stole my phone," if that's legit, they'll tell us. I mean, so that's part of that well check. Totally agree. All right, now let's say this happens. So let's say you have to send him out. You got to go ahead and suspend him. We do the threat assessment. So let's say the threat assessment's done with you and the sheriff's department, and they determine it's not a valid threat. Let's say you do that fast, so you know that by Monday morning. So what are we doing now? It's not a valid threat. What's the punishment for Joey? He's already at 7 days. Now he's at 9 because you had to burn Friday and Monday. Remember, federal law remember, state law is zero tolerance, right? What's manifestation come from? Federal or state law? Federal. So federal trumps state. So manifestation trumps zero tolerance. Bless you. So what are we going to do? What's your punishment for him? Other than praying. Because what this is saying is, this blew up on Facebook. Imagine how many people saw it. You're getting lit up by community members. You're getting lit up by parents. You got people saying they're never going to let their kid come back. If that kid comes back, and now you got a situation where threat assessment doesn't come back. You know, if you do a manifestation, what's going to happen? It's going to manifest, and that's going to mean you're either doing ISS or something. So what are you possibly doing? Hide your ears on this one there. You're going to maybe hold an emergency IEP or 504 meeting, and you're going to see if the parents will agree to what? A change of placement. Now it's not a disciplinary change of placement. And by the way, that doesn't have to be you. That could be virtual. There's lots of ways we can do that. I know you're grinning at me behind those hands. But it could be a change of placement by agreement. The other thing I'd say, that you guys heard me preach about this before, but it's really important. Don't make the card playing mistake of playing the hand too hard in that meeting. And what I mean by that is, don't say, guys, if it's October, don't say, hey, we want Joey there the rest of the year. What you're doing there is you increases the chances, right, Kim? You increase the chance that parent's going to fight you. What you're going to say is, hey, I tell you what, we think he's got a court date in 28 days. Why don't we just agree that we're going to put him in alternative? Sorry, man. Why don't we agree we're going to put him there for 30 days? We'll go ahead and pull out your calendar. I'll go ahead and put the next 504 meeting on your calendar. We'll meet, and if it's no longer a good placement, we'll bring him back. But in the meantime, we can keep a better eye on him. We know there's a better chance that juvenile court's going to be happy that he's not getting in more trouble. You know that these kids, if he comes back now, he's under a microscope, which is not fun. You guys can make the arguments, right? But what have I done with that subtle move? What have I done? What have I also done? We've calmed everybody down. And let's say you push too hard. Let's say out of the gate you decide, I'm just going to check no on manifestation. And parents file for due process. Where does he stay while due process is filed? At your school. Stay put, right? If you move him 30 days, and then at the end of that 30 days, parents come back and say, we want him back, and you say, no, we disagree. Now while you're fighting, where does he stay? Alternative. Because stay put has moved to alternative even though you just did 30 days. So now you have moved your little Google Map pin to a place of love. I had to have fun with you there. All right, any questions? Yep.
I got a question about, like, what should the threat assessment, how many people should be made up
Mhm.
of, who should it be made up of? Should we have the same team every time?
If it's at his house, we're not going there.
Oh, yeah, no. So we're going to have to bring him in to do some sort of threat assessment. And we might have to call him. We have to ask the questions. That's what we're talking about. And one thing that was asked during the break, and I want to bring this up. This gets asked a lot. I don't think your SROs are going to be mad at me. I'm coming to that question. I don't think your SROs need to be part of the questioning part of the threat assessment. They don't need to be sitting in with you questioning the kid. Because easily that threat, because this is a crime. Threat of mass violence is a crime. So if that SRO is in there and you're asking questions to a kid that then that SRO takes and charges with, what should happen to the kid beforehand? They should have been Mirandized, right? Because what's this? Well, we're getting deep here, but the standard for when you have to be Mirandized is, do you believe you're in custody or not? Are you in a custodial, what we call interrogation? The standard there is, do you think reasonably you can leave? What kid, if they're called to a meeting in your office with the SRO sitting there, thinks they can walk out and leave? So every court has been clear on this. They think that kid should be Mirandized. But if you don't have the SRO in there, do you have to Mirandize? No. Do you have to call mom and dad and run? No. You can just interview the kid. So really it's better for the SRO and for us if we don't have them in the questioning. We just bring the SRO in on the back end when we're going through the analysis is what I would call it. Okay? I think at least 3 people. I mean, because I always want there to be some way. If you ask me to set up a company, although nobody does that much anymore, I would basically say I always want at least 3 board members because you don't ever want to tie. Right? Same thing here. But there's no magic number. Everybody does it a little different. I think you're also going to see, if I'm being candid, now that we know that if there's a situation of the worst case scenario, which is threat assessment team deems it invalid, kid comes back and does it. That threat assessment team is going to have a lot of eyes on it, a lot of second guessing on it. You're going to I think you're going to start seeing more people invite DA's offices to be part of that too, because then you have that 3 different agencies are signing off on it rather than just 2. And that also gives you that automatic tiebreaker too. Does that make sense? And 2 of those would be law enforcement related. So that's something I think a lot of people are looking at, is just having kind of a permanent DA member on there, assistant DA, somebody like that.
Hey, Chris,
Yeah.
question. So,
Sure.
Like if that were to happen at our school, say the kid was
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
already,
Mhm.
like before he did this.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Like what we would do is like every day when he came in, like
Oh,
we
yeah.
would take him in and, I mean, like we
For-
bond every day.
yeah, yeah, you're gonna do a
We
full
would
breakdown.
physically- We would
Yeah.
physically search him.
Yeah.
Take him in, take off the shoes.
Sure.
You know, loosen your belt, let's
Yep.
be friendly, that kind of thing. So how long would we be able to do that after that event? Let's say that it happens in, November.
Yep.
And so we search that kid, that kind of search every day for the rest of the year. And then we,
So the way I'm going to handle that is, I think depends on how you handle it with the parent. And hear me out when I say this. I think what you're saying to the parent there is, hey, look, if we wanted to push this really hard, we could do a true expulsion with your student. We're giving them access to this school and alternative education. The quid pro quo there is going to be, they're going to get searched. So if you want them to come, they're going to get searched. That's just how this is going to work. You're almost making it like a plea agreement, if that makes sense, rather than just you doing it. You're telling them that, hey, if you decide that you want to take the true expulsion, go ahead. They won't be searched. But if they're coming here, we're giving you the grace of letting you come to alternative. We're gonna search you. Just if you communicate that from the front, I think the rest of the year. Yeah, I think the rest of the year.
and when the new year starts.
Yeah, I think you are starting over there. Yeah, that's the hard part, is that unless there's statute that says you can bleed into that next year, it's tougher, right? At least let that 180, the year after the 180.
School year.
Yeah, the year after the 180, yeah.
After May.
Right.
When you come back in.
Yeah. Now, it's possible, though, you could be expelled through, what I would say is after the expulsion period. Does that make sense?
180 days.
The 180 days. After that, there's really not much else we as a school can do to you. Yeah. Because remember, you got that constitutional right to come to school. So that's where those things come in, too. Tennessee constitutional right. All right, let's keep going. All right, so you guys are good on this one. All right, so zero tolerance is different now for threat of mass violence. Now, this one I think is going to be big. All right. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing. What this basically says is now if you do even a simple assault, and I'll explain what that is. If you even have a simple assault on an employee, any school employee, there's mandated by the state that 2 different punishments have to happen. One is, I'm going to say, the school day punishment. The other is the non-school day punishment. Hear me out. One is they have to be suspended. The principal gets to decide how long. I think that could even be ISS. Okay, so if you have a student with an IEP or a 504, you can still play ball with the days with the first part. The second part's the big change. And that kid, if they assault any employee, shall be suspended from attendance at all school-sponsored events for not less than 1 calendar year. So guys, let me say this super blunt. If you assault an employee in the state of Tennessee now, a school employee, it doesn't matter and I'll explain, if we determine it's assault, you are now off the football team. You can't go to football games. You're off the basketball team. You're not going to prom. You're not walking at graduation. And by the way, if it happens in October, let's be super blunt there, you're off the football team till when? Next October, unless modified by the director of schools. There's only one person that can do it. Not even the board can modify it. So this is a message from the state legislature that they want people to stop getting hit. They just want employees. And by the way, now let's talk about what this means. So they're specifically referencing and telling us to be guided by a criminal statute, which is 3913-101, which says these things could contribute to being an assault. Okay? One way you can be assault is intentional, knowing, or reckless cause of bodily injury. Guys, it doesn't say serious bodily injury. It says any bodily injury. So if I cause a black eye, if I scratch your arm, that could be assault under this statute. Okay? So, and by the way, go back to this for a second. When do you have so let's use regular ed for a second. When do you get a DHA? When do you get a DHA? What triggers a DHA? How many days? Yeah, more than 10. More than 10. So alternative placement or expulsion or long-term suspension of more than 10 triggers your right to a DHA. there is no right to an appeal of this. Why? Because DHA, the reason you have a right to an appeal is because we're suspending you from what? The school day, right? And you have a right under the Tennessee Constitution to go to school. Playing football, going to prom, walking at graduation is a privilege, not a right. So the moment we issue this punishment, unless the director of schools modifies it, it is in place. There is no appeal by the parent. And like I said earlier, it doesn't say the board can modify it. It specifically says only the director. Okay, number 2, the other way you can get there is intentionally or knowingly causes another to reasonably fear imminent bodily injury. Break that down. That is a threat. Now, it's got to be an imminent threat. It can't be that I say something to you on Tuesday that I won't come find you on Thursday. But if I'm standing in front of you, and I couldn't beat you up, but you know what I'm saying? Like if I'm standing in front and I'm bigger and I've got better knees, and you think this kid who's 6'2" that can do something is going to hurt me, and I say to my math teacher, I'm going to kick you through that wall, and I'm standing 10 feet from you, you're by gosh right, that's assault. So the moment that threat is made, and we'll talk about, there's one exception I'm going to make in a second. The moment that threat is made, by law now, the state of Tennessee says we are banning that kid from school-related events as of that day. That's not a local decision, that's state law. Okay? And by the way, guys, let's just be super honest with each other for a second. If you said to me, I've had a bunch of DHAs over the years. I've had a bunch of DHAs that have made it even to the board. I've never, knock on wood, I've never had a DHA where somebody takes me to court over it. I've had multiple lawsuits over girls getting kicked out of prom. I've had multiple lawsuits over somebody not being able to walk at graduation. And I guarantee you, if we kick kids off football teams and basketball teams, there's a much, because if you go back to Chris McCarty in high school and you say you got 2 choices, one's alternative school the rest of the year and the other is not playing football, I'd be an alternative that day. I'd have chosen it, okay? So I'm just saying, parents, it's not news to us, right? If we start kicking kids off teams, we are greatly increasing our chances of a fight. Just reality. So we got to get it right, okay? One other thing that you have to do here, there's more, is if that employee if we determine the employee has been assaulted, we then have to meet with the employee and document that we advise them that they have a right to file charges against the kid. They have a right to file a juvenile petition against that student. We have to tell them that. We have to remind them of that. We also, to show you how serious they are about the school ban, the related events ban, let's say we say to that kid, hey, you're banned from all school-related events, and they show up to a game on Friday night, we don't even get to give them a warning. We're supposed to report them for trespass the first time they violate it. We have to ask the SRO to charge them. That's in the statute. If the employee ends up filing a petition against that student for assault, we then have to contact the DA's office and, quote, encourage the prosecuting attorney to put that school-related event ban in the order from the court. So it's basically now going to be an order from the school and a restraining order preventing them from coming to school-related events. So when I tell you the state is sending a message here, they are, and let's just get to the real point of it. What did I say a second ago triggers manifestation? Change of what? You're not changing placement if you get kicked off the basketball team. You're not changing placement if you don't go to prom. So this does not trigger manifestation, guys. If you don't think that's why the state did it, that's exactly why they did it. They're trying to get to kids that they've not typically been able to punish. And they're trying to hit them in places where they are not triggering manifestation. Yep.
Do we, like, in the school,
Yep.
or will there be something from the district, if this were to happen?
Sure.
That we, like a form or a document that we would give them that would say you are now
We're
banned?
gonna have to come up with a form letter. That if you have an employee assault, we're gonna have to come up with form language that basically outlines to the parent. We're gonna cite to the state statute.
Sure.
Like this is not an Anderson County decision. This is the state law that we now mandatory have to send you out for a year from all school-related events. And guys, when people start realizing my kid threatened a teacher at school and now they're not walking at graduation in 6 months, we're gonna have pandemonium, right?
And that would be like, say a kid did it here at ACCPC.
Sure.
Couldn't go to something at Clinton.
Correct.
It's
It would
like
all school property.
schools?
Yep, all school property. So like, for example, like you said, kid does something at Anderson County High School, then there's a game at Clinton. They're banned from that game too. Now, I'm worried about the practicality of that. Like you're not going to know the kids as well.
Right.
So we're going to do the best we can. I'm not saying we're not going to miss any there, but certainly you're going to have to play super tight at your school.
Yeah.
All right, let me do a scenario here. I want to talk about
Basketball and stuff like that,
What?
little brothers, little sisters stuff. that
Can't
they
come.
say- Yeah.
Can't come.
Yeah, I'm just.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So just a question. So
I'm coming back.
In this school, we only have one culinary arts teacher, so the teacher, now we have
Yep.
that teacher files the petition with juvenile court.
Yep.
Order of protection. How do I put that kid back in there?
So the kid gets to come back here. So that's the hard part, right? The kid has a Tennessee constitutional right to come to school. And that's why the first part of the statute, no, that's a great question. First part of the statute is we just have to suspend them for whatever the school-related punishment is. So if the only way they can access those academics is to come to this school, they get to come back. Even with that order of protection, we're just going to be able to tell that teacher, hey, we'll notify the SRO, but if you're the only one teaching this class, which they want to take, then they have a right to take it. That is tough, but no, that definitely comes with it. We've had that come up. That's easier in like middle school, elementary school, right? Because like I think about when I taught 8th grade, we did pods. There was blue pod and gold pod. So if I move you from gold pod to blue pod, done, right? I can do that. But no, if you're the only teacher that teaches AP history, that kid's coming back. Yep, go ahead, and then I'll come.
But if a parent's in agreement for change of placement.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, then we're good there. If the parent agrees, all bets are off. We're good to go. 100%. Did you have a question? You pulled it? Okay, got it. Anybody else? Yep.
Hey, isn't assault on an employee zero tolerance?
So it's aggravated assault on an employee now is zero tolerance. This is not, now, the way the statute's going to read now is for it to be zero tolerance, as in terms of an expulsion, it's going to be aggravated assault on an employee. If it's simple assault on an employee, it's going to be some suspension plus. Now play that out more though. Let's say you have zero tolerance against the kid. Oh man, this gets more fun. Let's say you have zero tolerance because it's aggravated assault against the employee, but let's say Tim decides, he's not going to do this if it's aggravated assault, but let's say Tim decides, I'm going to let that end in May. We would have to have a separate decision on the school-related events ban. So we'd have to have two decisions. One, did you move the school-related event ban? And two, did you modify zero tolerance? Because remember, there's only one person that can modify either one, and he's sitting in the back.
What if two kids get into a fight in a classroom? Teacher tries to break it up.
Oh,
They get hit.
Yeah. No, I'm laughing because let's go through my scenario. You just nailed it. All right, let's talk about it. All right, so my scenario is, let's go. Great minds think alike, right? On Monday morning in October, not even 10 minutes after the first bell, you are called down over the radio to the CDC room to, quote, break up a big fight. Upon arriving, you see two CDC students, Johnny, who has Down syndrome, and Ricky, who is autistic, fighting and wrestling over a weighted blanket. Now, right now, Kim Tao's fixed this because she just ordered a weighted blanket. She's got two. We don't have this again, right? All right, but Ricky is holding the blanket while Johnny is punching Ricky's arms, trying to make him let go of the blanket. Before you can say a word, the CDC teacher, the 4'10", Mrs. Lilliputian, steps, I got some ELAs in here, okay, steps behind Johnny to place a hand on his back. As she does so, though, going to your question, Johnny is pulling back to deliver yet another punch, and his elbow cracks Miss Lilliputian directly in the face. The blow shatters her nose and knocks her out cold. She is soon transported by ambulance to the local ER. So she's getting wheeled out of your school. Great scene, right? Now let's make this more fun. Johnny is a well-known and beloved member of your community. He has served as the football team's manager for more than 3 years. Miss Lilliputian is married to the head pastor at First Baptist. And you receive texts from 5 church elders before you walk out of school that day. Talk amongst yourselves and walk me through what you're going to do next and how. All right, go ahead. All right, guys, let's talk. Okay, what do you think? What do you think? And we put the definition back up there.
Support your teacher.
So what do you think? Support your teacher?
Talk your teacher.
Okay, in what way? What were we saying to her?
One, you're going to get how she feels.
You probably wait till she wakes up.
Yes. But I mean, at the end of the day, based on number one, A1, it's reckless bodily injury.
Okay.
That was reckless. If she wanted to pursue, and I know folks are saying, oh, she's a CDC teacher. She's going to know that it was an accident. Well, if she's been dealing with these kids for 10 weeks and she's frustrated with them, whether she knows it or not, if based on that, you could pursue.
So can I stay with you for a second?
Absolutely.
So I'm tricking you on this one on purpose.
That's okay.
So go ahead.
What's his intent?
No, but I think that's a fair reading of the statute. There you go.
His intention was to hit Ricky, not his teacher.
But what about reckless?
No.
What about
Causes
reckless?
bodily injury, or it's not and, it's or.
So I'll stay with this. So let me stay with you for a second. Let me stay with both y'all. If this is a regular education student, take away the Down syndrome. If this is a regular education student, he's done reckless harm. Because reckless is basically, I'm giving you a short version of it, reckless is creating a zone of danger to where, you're punching Jimmy, but you know if you're regular ed and you know the difference, you pull back, you could hurt somebody else. If you're swinging a bat and you know you're aiming at so-and-so, but you know you could follow through and hit that's reckless still. Same thing as like negligent homicide or reckless homicide. If I point a gun at somebody and I shoot that person, that's intentional homicide, right? But if I miss, I'm still shooting a deadly weapon and I hit somebody else, now it's reckless homicide. See the difference? That zone of danger is what you're creating here. Yeah, if some kid, if you've got two kids getting in a fight and they pull back and hit you as you're breaking it up, that could be reckless. The fly in the ointment on this one is he's got Down syndrome. All right, because this is what I was talking about with these guys, right? When the state uses, which I understand why they do it, when they use these criminal statutes to tell us what the definition is, then that tells me as a lawyer, I got to use the court interpretations of those criminal statutes when we read it. So right now, let me ask you this question. Even though you just watched one episode of Law & Order, if I said to you, could you ever hold that kid with Down syndrome in juvenile court responsible for this act? No. Why not? Because they're not what? They're not competent. They actually cannot form what we call the mens rea. The mens rea is intent, knowing, or reckless. They're not competent to form that. They don't know the difference between right or wrong. So hold on one second. When you have those severely disabled kids, I'm talking about a nonverbal autistic kid. A lot of the kids in CDC, a Down syndrome student, a kid with TBI, they're not actually going to be able to form intent, knowing, and the criminal statutes are clear on that. That's why they don't go to trial. And it's actually made it easier for some of those kids because Kim would tell you, we got some of those kids that are already under conservatorship. So if you're under conservatorship, what's that mean? That means a court in Tennessee has already said you're not competent to handle anything. So not only, if we already got that, there's no way we could hold you criminally competent, right? So that kid, it's not going to be assault, not because he didn't hurt her, but because he actually can't form the mental aspect of it. But a regular ed kid, no doubt. I mean, if they pull back and hit you, that's still going to fall under this. Go ahead, question.
So, kindergartner who's not special ed.
Let's go there. Yep, great question. The other thing that we pull back into here is we go into those common law concepts of, there's an old concept that I never thought I'd have to pull it into education law as much as I am now, in criminal stuff, which is basically the rule of sevens. When we look at criminal culpability, we look at legal liability, we literally look at, we go back hundreds of years, we call the rule of sevens, which is anybody 7 or under cannot be criminally competent. We just determined that they're so young, they don't know what they're doing, right? So I would argue no kid 7 or under can actually do this. So kindergarten or pre-K, I don't care if they're special ed or not, they can't do this. They can't do this. Between 8 and 14, you can have some, so we're going to have to make a call there. But yeah, any kid 7 or under, there's no way, no criminal court would try them, and there's a reason it goes back to that old rule of sevens. Yep. What's that? Exactly. That's exactly right. They didn't even charge him for the same reason. It was kindergartner. Okay, hold on. In order, go ahead. Whoever.
Okay. So let's say you've got a kid that's CDC, autistic, but and we had one like this. He's 6'3", 270.
Sure.
And, I mean,
that hurts my feelings when you act like that's big, but go ahead. I know I got a BMI problem, Darren, but keep going.
I mean,
270 sounds pretty good right now.
For me to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, I'm pretty sensitive.
So, let's say that here's the trouble we have. When a lot of times, let's say that kid gets upset about something, and he's nonverbal, and I get it. Sometimes he has an itch on his back, and he can't communicate. So he gets angry about it.
Sure. Yeah.
But he can still do harm.
Big time.
I mean, he can hurt people. I mean,
Big time.
He did. And then when you call the police and they get there, I mean,
they
immediately see the kid, and so you got a bunch of teachers getting rock'em sock'em robot around.
Yep.
Nothing's going to happen to them because the kids obviously, but people are getting hurt.
I know.
Nobody does anything to stop it.
Yeah, the only way you're going to start seeing and this statute, to answer your question, doesn't solve that at all, because I don't think, for the same reason you could never charge that kid in juvenile court, you could never hold them criminally responsible either, and this is a criminal statute. So we're never going to be able to say they're competent to understand right from wrong here, right? So this statute's not going to help you there either. I wish it did. The only way that's going to change is if we still have the 45 days, but the 45 days doesn't help you, because where we put them for 45 days is your spot, right? We're starting to see people get more creative about that, but even that, 45 days is the most I could offer you if they commit that serious bodily injury, right? Now, I will say this, and this goes back, we'll roll this all the way back to the great Kim Tao. This is going to affect kids, though, that are not what I would call severely disabled. So if I've got a kid who's ED that does know the difference between right or wrong, and a court could hold them criminally competent, we're going to apply this. So the kid that's oppositional defiant, the kid that's ED, the kid that is ADHD for sure. Impulsivity means you might be more likely to do it. Doesn't mean you don't know it's wrong. Okay? So here, those kids are going to suffer the consequences of the school-related ban. So the kid that has the behavior plan, the kid that does know right from wrong, I mean, you know the difference what I'm talking about, guys. We know, right? If you got the severely autistic kid who's nonverbal, there's no way a court's ever going to look at them like a cop and say they're capable of making those decisions. But the kid with ED does. The kid with bipolar disorder does. So that's going to be the interesting part, is those kids are going to get hit by this. That'll be the first time, really. What's that? No. Anybody. So just go ahead and write it down that if you're 7 or under, this would not apply. No, that's a great question. I wasn't making fun of that. Anybody 7 or under cannot form criminal culpability, which means this criminal statute would not apply to them. I'll put that. You can put that down. 7 or under. It's possible. We're going to have to look at them there. And that's where Kim's going to kill me when I'm about to say what I'm about to say. It's getting to where we're going to probably have to start asking school psychologists questions and for input more than just doing evals. And some of these, it might not be asking them to do a full eval, but just kind of getting a, hey, is it possible that? We might have to start asking those questions, because I don't know another way to do it. And I don't know who's qualified to make those decisions, because they're asking us to make the decision on competency and do you know right from wrong, and in a criminal type statute. I don't know another way to do it, candidly. I mean, we're not, none of us, including me, are qualified to make that call just on our own. We might need some backup there. Yeah. Now, certainly you don't need that for a kid that's 14 that has an ADHD diagnosis. The answer is this would apply to them. Okay, this would apply to them. All right, I told you this one's going to be a big one. Any other questions on it? All right, let me try to fly through real quick and hit some other stuff. We won't do any more scenarios, but I want to hit a couple more things that are big. K through 2 people, real quick, my K through 2 people. Tennessee has passed a bill that says if you have a K through 2 parent and that child has a documented history of behavioral or academic concerns, that parent can now request they be retained. K through 2. We don't know yet what that's specifically going to look like, because basically the statute tells the state board to come up with the rules on it. But the statute's clear that it'll be the parent that has the leverage there, not us. We would be on the defensive to say we don't want them retained. So if they have, I'll go ahead and tell you, if they have any kids that have academic or behavioral issues from K2, it's going to be really hard for us to deny the parent retention. Really, really hard.
But that's just K2.
That's just K2. Okay. Now, let me say this. Let me put some bright lining on that for a second, because y'all are going to see some really creative mamas on this. And I'm saying mama because there's no way a dad would come up with this. This is too smart, okay? I said that. I'm a dad. I don't care. If you and somebody else told me this angle, which I thought was pretty smart. Let's say hypothetically you had a kid and you're a parent and you're worried your kid's not a good test taker. You see where I'm going, right? Your kid's not a good test taker, and you're worried about 3rd grade. You're worried they're going to be stressed out of their gourd the whole year, and in 4th grade. So you just decide, hey, in 2nd grade, I'll just decide to retain them. I'll come to the school. I'll tell my own child, hey, I've just decided, you know what, Mary? I started you too early. Me and Dad have talked, and we've decided just to hold you back a year, let you get your feet under you. Now your kid's not stressed about the test. Why? Because if you if you don't meet expectations on ELA in 3rd grade, can we retain you if you've been retained already? The answer is no. So you could have a creative parent that just goes ahead and pulls the trigger on 2nd grade or 1st, and then they don't have to worry about 3rd and 4th.
It sets them up for football and...
There you go. There you go. Now, play that out, though. Hypothetically, not that that would ever happen, but if you did have a parent that wrote in and said, hey, I want to hold my kid back, I think it's what's best for them, and it would help them in football later, our answer is no under the statute. But if they were smart enough to not make it about that, this would be very easy to do. Yep. Okay. Any questions? So K through 2 only. Not that that would ever happen. That never happens at Alcoa either, from what I understand. So I'm going to keep going. I'm playing. You guys can tell them I said that. All right. Nix is my buddy. All right. Public Chapter 550 basically says we have to have an AI policy. We do now. And all it basically says is be smart. don't abuse it. If you're using ChatGPT to do everything you teach, then we got a problem. It doesn't mean you can't use it. Just don't abuse it. Right? Same thing with kids. If you're using ChatGPT or AI to help you do research, and then that helps you write the paper, great. But if it's writing your paper, that's when we have a problem. Okay? Just basically says be reasonable. Another thing, principals, just remember is this year at some point the State Department of Safety has to issue new training on de-escalation. And all of our employees, I'm talking every employee, has to sit for it. Custodians, cafeteria workers, TAs, everybody has to sit for it. This does not take the place of restraint training. I think of restraint training as 301. This will be 101. Okay? This is just making sure that every employee in Tennessee has a basic understanding of a real rudimentary de-escalation techniques. Okay? But that'll be for everybody now on. We don't have it yet, so when it comes out, we'll give it to you. All right, we were talking about this during the break. I think you guys said they're already posted. You guys already have your visitor code of conduct posted? Okay. So now by law, every school and every school system has to have a visitor code of conduct that we post at the entrance to the school, the ball fields, the entrance to the gym, because we're basically, the state wants us to make it clear to parents, you're getting out of hand. Okay? The way people are acting at ball games, the way people are acting during parent-teacher conferences, the way people are just losing their minds, we now have those posted rules, and the state is basically saying, we'll back you up on it. So now that doesn't mean we're going to kick everybody out every time they raise their voice. Okay? That doesn't mean that, because then we're going to have pretty vacant schools. But certainly if people are pushing it, and they keep pushing it, they step over that line, this gives you more backup to say, hey, I'm going to ask you to leave. Okay? Now, I said this a second ago, and I mean it. That applies to IEP meetings. That applies to parent-teacher conferences. If you call me to an IEP meeting, it's usually bad. Okay? I think we can definitely agree on that, right? And I've said more than once to a parent in an IEP meeting who is cussing me, who is yelling at me, who is calling people names I've never heard before that I had to look up. I said this in May to a parent. I said, if you keep it up, I just want to be very clear what's about to happen. If you keep insulting people, you keep raising your voice, you keep cursing at me, we are putting an end to this meeting now, and the next time you ever see me, you'll be on a computer screen. You will not be coming back in person to this school. You have a right to attend an IEP. It doesn't mean you have to right to attend it in person. All right, so we absolutely can set those standards. There's nothing wrong with it. If there's one thing we got from the pandemic is that I can have an IEP meeting on a computer screen. All right, we're good there? There's your rules. That was my Gipper speech. All right, let's keep going. Last one, I'll let you guys go and I know Tim said we're going to meet with some principals as well. That sounded worse than it was, but you know what I meant. Last thing, my library bill. 2 years ago, we had the age-appropriate materials of 2022. That's the library bill. You guys remember that, where we basically had to catalog everything that we offer. It includes reading nooks. Remember one thing before I talk about it this year, there's a big change to it. That bill does not have anything to do with curricular materials. It still doesn't. So if you have a textbook that's got a pre-approved textbook that's got a story in it that touches on sexuality, that's still okay. Because that's an approved textbook. It's part of a curriculum. You with me? This is about library materials. These are optional materials that we're making available to kids to grab or to use that are not part of an approved curriculum, that are not part of an approved assignment, that are not part of an AP-approved reading list. Those things are still completely fair game. But our library materials now, the way that bill did read, is it basically said that those materials have to be, quote, age-appropriate. Now the state's come back and said, no. We don't care about age-appropriate. We'll still call it that. But it's anything that falls under these definitions is now by definition inappropriate. It doesn't matter if it's 12th grade or kindergarten. And these definitions are tight, guys. Okay, if I read this completely legalistically, there is no way you could have an art book about the Renaissance in your library. Okay, because any depiction of nudity, it's out. If I read excess violence, means the depiction of acts of violence in such a graphic or bloody manner as to exceed common limits of custom and candor, or in such a manner that it is apparent that the predominant appeal of the material is the portrayal of violence for violence sake. Now, clearly, if you got a book or a graphic novel about D-Day, it's not violence for violence sake. What's the point? To show the sacrifice of the soldiers, to show the tactics of World War II, what they did, etc. And I'm not picking on this, but there's other ways to do it. If it's a manga book, if it's certain anime graphic novels, it's harder to argue that it's not violence for violence sake. I mean, if somebody can make a better art argument, I'll take it. But I'm just saying some of that stuff is going to get more difficult, right? So if you get a complaint, the biggest thing to remember from this is that we have to take care of that formal complaint about that material within 60 days. Why am I telling you how important that is? If we completely dispose of that complaint within 60 days, there is no review. It can't go to the state. It can't go to court. It is just our decision. If we take 64 days, it goes to the State Department of Ed, and they decide if we're right or wrong. So it's really important that you start moving quick if we get a complaint under this, because if we dispose of it, it's only an Anderson County decision. If you don't want somebody over your shoulder, move quick. Any questions? All right, I went through that. That's the big stuff this year. Do y'all have any other questions about new changes in law, anything I've talked about, anything you heard about you want me to address? I have no idea who's going to win the national championship. My NCAA 25 team's looking pretty good, though. Not really. I'm terrible at it. Anybody got anything else? Nothing? All right, Tim, you decide what's next, sir.
We got